Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ben from Universal Audio, and welcome to episode 100. Holy crap. We get it. We did it, guys. We've actually, full disclosure, we've done more than 100 episodes over the last year or so, but this is the official number 100 of Office Hours, hanging out with all of you lunatics. And before we dive into today's show, I just gotta say a huge thanks to all of you. There's so many familiar names and faces I see in the chat every single week. You guys are awesome. You guys are the reason why we do this. And we're going to continue doing these because y'all keep on showing up every week. And we have fun putting these shows together, answering your guys' questions, hanging out, playing music. It doesn't get much better than this. So today's show, we're going to cover a lot of ground, like more ground than we've ever covered before. Because we're going to attempt, with a little help from my friends, we're going to drive through over 100 of our favorite UAD and Luna tips. I've learned a lot from doing this show over the last year. I'm sure you guys have as well. So today we're kind of bringing back a bunch of our favorite tips and tricks that we've learned along the way. And it'll be fun kind of hanging out with you guys, seeing what's new, which ones are new and interesting to you guys, which ones do you already know, just having a lot of fun. And yeah, I see all the love in the chat. 100. Happy 100, guys. This is so cool. Luckily, I'm not celebrating alone. I've got the boys. We got Matt, Drew, Monty. How you guys doing today?
Good. How you been? Morning.
Whew, guys, we've done a lot of these shows.
You feel old? You feel old, Ben?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, you guys have noticed that there's more gray from when we started streaming to now. Yeah. Man, but this is so cool. Like, we've over the last year just we launched Luna doing live streams, and then we've just never stopped. And it's been such a killer year, over a year now of like hanging out, learning things. Like, I know it feels like every single week, I don't know about you guys, but I walk away being like, holy crap, Drew, I didn't know that. Or
yeah,
there's always
me too.
There's always this like one moment every show where you're like, dude, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
So
well,
I think
hopefully we'll see a few of those today. We'll see.
I was like, I think today we're gonna get as many of those back to back as possible.
Yeah.
And then of course I teased it in the title of the show, but at the end of the show as well, after we get through all of our tips, there is a Luna update coming this week with some new features. So stick around to the end, and we'll show you guys what features are arriving in Luna with the next update, which is due out this week. But yeah, guys, this gonna be really fun. We asked I don't know if you saw, but we had some Instagram and Facebook posts, people asking for ideas for the episode. There were so many good ideas, but I feel really bad because I don't remember exactly who suggested this idea of like kind of summarizing all of our favorite tips. But if it was you, congratulations. Thank you very much. It's a fantastic idea. And of course, like anything, we're going to go overboard and try to do, we've actually got more than 100 in our list, but we're not going to bother count. We're not going to keep count of any of these. But what I think would actually be really, really fun is in the chat, if you guys kind of respond in real time as we're laying down a tip, like give it like a really big thumbs up or like horn, like show us how exciting each tip is with emojis. Because that would be the easiest way for us to digest how these tips are sinking in, right? Like some fire emojis, some like question marks, but of course,
some 100 emojis.
100 exactly. We'll get it rolling today. But of course, we're going to be moving fast. So some of these we have talked about in the past. So if there's any kind of lingering questions, or if we're kind of moving too fast, you can rewind and rewatch this. As far as I know, we're gonna cover a lot of tips all at once. So
yeah, we won't necessarily be showing every single one of them, right? It'll just like some of them will just be mentions and so forth. So yeah, it's not like we can possibly show 100,
Yep. There we go. People are testing out the emojis right now, so they're working. The emojis are coming through, guys. That's great. So trying to before I forget, make sure if you guys aren't already, you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. That way it shows up on your feed every time we go live. If you hit the notification bell, your phone will buzz. And there's this little thing going on right now. I'm trying to think of what it's called. Oh yeah, the UAD half yearly sale. It's just like the biggest sale of the year is happening right now. So if you guys, if you're looking to pick up some UAD plugins or some Luna extensions, I can assuredly say that now is the time to do it. There's still also a promo on desktop Apollos, like the Twin and the Solo. So if you've been thinking about buying something, now is a great time to do it. I think
On here and Ben, hey, here's a little tip. Here's a little tip for those. The Luna API console emulation is not a part of the sale directly, but if you do a 3+1, and buy all the components or the missing components you might not have, it comes along. So little trick there.
Tip number 1 right there from Drew.
Tip number 1. Yeah, there we go. That wasn't even on my list, but there you go.
Nice. Well, Drew, man, since you already started the tips flowing, let's start with you, man. We're gonna kick it around through all 4 of us. We'll each take a few tips at a time. Again, everybody in the chat, we're gonna be moving fast, so just hit us with the feedback as quick as you can. And if there is a really good question, we might pause for a second to do it. But we got a lot of ground to cover. We don't got a lot of time. So Drew, kick us off. Where we're starting.
Yeah, so just so you know, we've all got notes because we've all prepared for this. So if you see us looking off to the side, that's what we're doing because we want to make sure we're getting this stuff right. So and a lot of these are pretty nerdy and pretty detailed. So for my first example, is I'm really big on navigating with the keyboard and with shortcuts and keeping things really concise. So I wanted to start out with a couple of things, make sure people are aware of some tips for navigating the timeline. So here I am at the beginning of a song, and I want to we have first thing we can talk about is tab to transient. So let's say I'm on this drum track here, and if I tab to transient, which is just the tab key, you can see that I'm going from each transient to another. This is really, and if you hold down Shift and Tab, you can make selections. So that's a really great shortcut for making selections, but also navigating through based on the transients. Now, another workflow that you might want to do is you might want to navigate based on clip boundaries. So that is the L and the apostrophe key. So if I'm going from each one, I can go and toggle between all of those. And then the L and the apostrophe key are also tied to our marker workflows. So if I have Control and Option and do L and apostrophe, I'm going back and forth. I'm navigating via my markers. And then just to wrap it all up, if I add Shift, that allows me to make a selection here. So this is a great one for bouncing. Like you'll notice in all of my sessions, I'll have a top and an end marker. And so if I'm at the beginning and I navigate to my first marker, hold down Shift and make the selection, then I can do a quick bounce and everything's going to be contained within that. So that's my first one. That's my first tip. It's several things nested into each other.
It's a great way to jump around inside of a session super fast.
Yeah. So you got tab to transient, you got clip boundaries, and then you also have markers, and then you add all that in there with selections by adding Shift, and you're going to be able to get a lot done on the timeline in short order.
Nice. You getting some smile heart emojis going there, Drew.
Oh, good. Yeah. See, a lot of mine are kind of are more nerdy, I guess. And you want me? I guess I'll do one more and then maybe hand it off because. So my number 2 is just in continuing with the keyboard shortcut theme. Is I want to focus on the QWERTY keyboard here from the second row down, the A through G, right? A, S, and then D, F, and G. These guys are really useful for editing, right? So if we have A is trimmed to start. So if you park your cursor here and hit the A key, it's going to trim up to that. If you hit the S key, it'll trim to the end. So that's one I do all the time. It's also it also works in conjunction with moving with the P and the colon because I can now trim, move down. So that's like a really fast workflow for cleaning things up. And then you've got your fades. D, F, and G are your fades. So, of course, D is fade to the beginning. G is fade out. And then whenever you make if you make a selection, then the F will create that crossfade for you.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, lastly R and T, right? Zoom in, zoom out. Those are 2. So, all those, and they're all right there by your left hand. So if you're used to that, that left hand is busy handling all that navigating stuff. And so those are my first couple ones.
Nice. Yeah, I love the left-hand workflow, man. Like that's so key for if anyone, whether even if you're doing this for fun, it's just it's good to get these things into like your muscle memory, right? So then you're just doing editing, doing kind of cruising around your session, all that sort of stuff just comes fast and naturally. And keyboard shortcuts are certainly the way to do it. And I love that you can do these all with single keys. Like you don't have to add command to do any of the stuff that Drew just showed you. So leaves your hand free to keep rolling. Nice. Well, let's keep it in Luna, and let's keep talking about the workflow here. Monty, let me throw it to you, man. What do you got for us? You got a muted mic. Oh, did we lose your audio, Monty? Oh no. Do you hear us? Because we don't hear you. Uno momento. So while Monty's doing that, Matt, let's we got so much ground to cover. We're gonna throw it to Matt. What got some tips for us, Matt?
Yeah, since we're already doing Luna stuff, let's start there. So one thing that I do all the time that's really useful in Luna is using the tracks list to kind of organize your session, rearrange tracks, show hide tracks. So yeah, the tracks list is this pane over here, what's normally shown in the focus browser if you don't have anything else selected. You can rearrange tracks just by clicking them and dragging them around in here.
Yes.
You can show hide by using this little circle button right here. That'll hide tracks when the circle's gray that they're showing. And you can change the color for tracks by clicking on that little color block, and then it brings up the color wheel. And you can do that for multiples.
I was like, yeah, you can select multiple tracks here too, right? And do all the same things.
Yeah. Hold down Shift, and then click something further down, and it'll select everything in between there. And you can batch assign colors to tracks all at once.
Hell yeah.
That's super useful.
Nice. What else you got?
Another one that's kind of a cool little trick that's hidden in Luna is if you have an audio track and you just want to like test some audio, maybe you're just trying to see if your outputs work or whatever. If you use the consolidate command plus control, so the consolidate command is Shift Option 3. If you add control to that, it'll make a blank, or it'll make a audio clip with a test tone in it. Oop, you saw that. So yeah, it's super useful just for like if you don't have a mic plugged in or whatever, you just want to get some audio in so you can test some outputs or whatever the case may be. It's a quick way to do that. And if you have multiple tracks stacked up and you do that on multiple tracks, it'll actually create a test tone at different tones, and it'll make like a F major chord if you stack enough of them together, which is a cool little Easter egg.
That's rad. And what level is that? Because it's a test signal, obviously it kind of matters what level that's coming out. Do you know RMS wise what that is?
I don't know off the top of my head, but looking at the meter here, it looks like it's around -20. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So if your system's all set up for like -20, then in theory that should be right around 0 dB VU is the idea. So this is kind of like a good level to align your system with.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah. Nice, man. What else? What's another Luna one?
Do another one here. So something, if you're working on like building loops, so say you have the loop ruler set up here, a cool thing to do is like you can, by default, the link edit play selections button is enabled. So basically if I were to highlight something here, it takes me out of my loop playback mode, and then when I start playback, it's going to be from wherever I selected. So if I unlink edit play selections, I can start my loop playback. It'll play at the boundaries of the loop ruler. And I can select something inside of it if I wanted to, select something in this clip and do some editing. When I hit play again, it's still going to start and end at the boundaries of my loop ruler. So it just kind of decouples the loop selection from the edit selection, lets you make edit selections while your loop is still rolling in the background, and then when you start and stop, you don't have to worry about reselecting the loop ruler again.
Oh, it's especially helpful if you're working, say like you're working with a guitarist on a guitar solo, and they just want to loop it over and over again, but you got other things to do. You can keep on looping an area while kind of moving around the session, doing other stuff.
Totally, yeah. You can be anywhere in the session while that's still playing back for them and doing your own thing. So yeah, it's a good way to multitask for sure.
Nice. You got a double ruler emoji on that one, Matt.
Nice.
Awesome.
Cool. If Monty's back, let's switch over to him. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're back, right, Monty? Yeah.
I'm back.
We go. Nice.
Yeah, Loopback was trying to get me. I'm back. So I wanted to talk about the MIDI workflow in Luna. I'm a fan of where we're going with it. And if you guys don't know, we have some special features. Specifically, when you hit E, you can explode it up large and get to this big MIDI workflow space. And you can hit one of these two buttons, Fit and Fold. Okay. Fit will just fit all of your performance into the same area, which has already done that for me here. And Fold will just break it down to the notes that you use. Yeah. So super clutch, especially if you're working with drums or things like that, and you just need specific MIDI notes to work with.
right? Yeah, if you just have the kick, snare, and hi-hats, it would just show you the kick, snare, and hi-hat notes.
Correct. And it's really really good for MIDI editing. And then we also have this automation lane pop up here that allows you to get all those MIDI velocities, and along with your MIDI CCs, which if you haven't looked into this menu before, if you just ignored it, we have a ton of CCs here for automation purposes. And it can get pretty gnarly. So one of the things that we allow is if, say you go in and create some automation here, you can end up breaking all this down. I don't know why it's not showing me right here. But there's a plus icon that shows, and you hit plus, it will just show you the automation that you use.
Oh,
so it's
cool.
a shortcut. It's usually a little plus icon here. So I'm not sure.
I think you have to close the focus pane and then open it back up, and then next, because after you put it in there for the first time, it shows with the plus, right?
No, it's
not
usually
showing for
here.
you.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Bug. I'll log that. But it's usually
That feedback button.
pretty. Right. But there's usually quite a few of these that you might automate, like sustain pedal or volume or anything like that within a MIDI performance, especially for those who do score work or any kind of piano work, and you want to get more automation. You get kind of gnarly in here.
Nice.
So it'll sum that up for you. Let's see, what else do I have? You also have some very cool features within this menu. Just being able to say, breath controller. You can do sustain. All those will end up shrinking your list. It'll filter your list down if you want, and that's just one of my tips. Just use this thing.
Search.
If you don't want to
always be searching, right?
Yeah, if you don't want to do that, and of course you can do that too within plugins. So if we go into our plugin workflow, and say you want to add a plugin, if you want, like, say, TubeTech or something like that, just typing that in is very quick. So the Focus browser is one of my tips. I use it constantly. I don't have this in other DAWs that I've worked in before, and it's just been a time saver, just jumping to plugins that you need pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And as we develop more features for this type of thing, it'll get smarter, and hopefully we'll have something that's really competitive that'll be great for everybody to use.
Hell yeah.
So then my last one is a relatively simple concept. I'm not sure how much different people use this feature, but I use it within loop-based workflows. Let me get back out here. So one of the things that we do in a lot of loop-based workflows is duplicating. So if you do kind of loop-based music and you want, like, another 8 bars of something, you can just hit Command D, and it'll automatically get you another 4 bars. And this is kind of one of those things. If you're doing a creation type thing, it can just speed up how fast you actually build out a song and arrange it. So if I have, like, bass and drums and I want to specifically mute this in a certain area, I can kind of build out and arrange my song with duplicate. Just kind of duplicate all of my tracks and quickly get a song crafted.
Like it's great how quick you can do that, right? You can just basically like if you come up with like your little 8 or 16 bar loop, select it, Command D, just duplicate it out, and then go through, mute some stuff up. 30 seconds later, you've got like a rough song structure to keep on like kind of crafting around.
Yeah, and within that, you can do something else, which is another tip, which is to hit the B key, and you can break, and then you can hit Command M to mute. So you can kind of do stuff within the loop and cut out and carve out your song and kind of set up the arrangement the way you want. So another way to do that is to use a selection and Command E, and it'll do the same thing.
Nice. And those two, both of those shortcuts should be pretty familiar to anyone that's worked in NADAW for splitting things.
That's right.
Splitting and muting, right? It's kind of the industry
exactly
standard right there.
Exactly. But that's it. That's what I got for my first one. Yeah.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, I guess that means it's my turn. So I'm going to also talk about the focus pane because there's so much cool stuff that you can do with it. One of them being, if you guys are anything like me, you probably have really long lists of presets or plugins, and scrolling through hundreds of different things can take a while. There's a really, really quick way to collapse all of those folders. You'll notice this little down arrow. If I close that, it just closes my Universal Audio folder. So I could go one at a time, but that's going to take a while. If you add Option to your click, it immediately closes all of your folders. So all of your plugin folders, now they're all shrunk. I can see all my manufacturers, and I can come down here. And I can open up my Sonox folder. I can open up my Sound Toys. You can open them up individually. And of course, the opposite of that works as well. You can hit Option, click on it, and now I've opened up all my folders again. So anything in the focus pane, the MIDI CCs, all these, Option click on the arrow to just quickly collapse them all, and then you can go kind of focus in on what you need to do next. So that's one.
And what's cool, Ben, is that'll remember that too. That next time you go to the browser, it stays where you left it, which is cool.
Absolutely. So another one is to do with versions and takes. So you can see this little bass part right here. This took me, so to open up the versions, first of all, up here in the tracks area, there's a little button. Click on that to show versions. And then now you'll see on my bass part, I did 4 takes, 4 versions of it. When you're working, whether you're working by yourself, or working with other musicians, this is invaluable to have at your disposal. Is be able to let me do it one more time. But you don't want to lose the other performance. So this is why you would use versions, or some of you guys may know these as like takes or playlists. You can come here, you can click the buttons. But we don't click buttons around here. We use keyboard shortcuts as often as we can. So, so really easy. It's Control and then /. So the slash key that's right above your Enter key. Click on that to create a new version 5. Or say you wanted to keep, basically keep the same thing, but maybe punch something in. If you add Command to that, you're going to duplicate your playlist. So now I went from 4 to 5, but notice my playlist didn't change. It brought all the information from 4, put it on number 5, and now I can punch in and keep going. And of course, what I really like about how Luna handles this is I can come in here and I can name these versions. I can't tell you how much this has like saved my butt on like vocal comps. Be able to come in here and say, all right, this one is the comp, this one is the good take, and this was trash. So it allows you to customize the names. It's a much better reminder when you open the session up a month later, like, oh yeah, V1 is trash. I should probably be using the comp. There we go. Right back at it. So I love being able to do that. And of course, all this works with groups. So whether you have a defined group or you're using selection grouping, just having those tracks in a group allows you to do the versions together. So if you're tracking drums, make a drums group, and then all of your versions kind of continue on as a group, which is very, very helpful. So that's versions. If you haven't used versions yet inside of your sessions, highly, highly recommend making use of that for keeping track of takes and doing multiple takes. But while we're here on my timeline, I want to talk about Drew showed some really great shortcuts, around editing and moving around through the session. Probably for me, one of the ones I use the most is changing my grid size and turning snap on and off. So like if I'm in here and right now I'm set to a bar, so any edits I make are going to happen on the bar level. Super great, really, really helpful for being able to chop out 4 bars or duplicating regions, being able to kind of build my song structure. But now if I want to get in here and say do some time correction and kind of some tweaking, I'm going to want to make my grid smaller so I can see quarter notes or 16th notes or etc. Once again, you can come up here, you can click on the grid value and tweak it, but there's a faster way. There's always a faster way. Shift minus. Let me zoom in so you guys can see this happening. Shift minus brings my grid size down, and plus brings it up. So I go bar, beat, half note, quarter note, eighth note, and you can see over here on my timeline, I'm now getting the different subdivisions shown. So that's a quick way to just quickly change, and I love that basically my muscle memory nowadays is, kind of, you can press and hold this, and now when you press and hold shift plus, it goes all the way back up to a bar, and then of course you can increment it back down, done editing, boom, back up to a bar level. So that's a really fast way to be able to change your grid size, and I love that you can just press and hold, and a second or two later, you're back up to the bar level of editing. But the other thing I find myself wanting to do a lot of times is turn snap on and off. Of course, there's a shortcut for that. It is Shift \. So the same key as what we were using just a moment ago for versions. Shift plus that key turns snap on and off. So if you want to be working on the grid, doing your arrangement, and then get off the grid to do some fades or some more precise edits, that's a quick way to just toggle that on and off. So yeah, those are a couple of my timeline. Oh, you know what? While I'm here, I gotta talk about this one. Tempo. As you guys know, when you're creating a new session, right? You can define the tempo, and you have a little tap tempo button here on the create page. But once you're in a session, this is something that I was like, all right, I'm in the session. I changed my mind. I don't want 80 BPM anymore. I want something different. So of course you can just type in. I can say no. Today we're going to go up to 81. But I wanted to tap it in. I want to feel it off of something else. Best way to do this after you've got a session going is hit on the tempo ruler right here. Hit the plus sign. It opens up over here on the focus browser. It opens up a tempo edit, and look at that. We got a tap button. So now I can come back in here. I can tap my tempo. Oh, see, I was actually feeling this at 82. It was very close.
Yeah.
A lot of times what I do, again, guys, is like I'll tap it. And you see, it's a very, very precise tap tempo, it's nice to see kind of where I'm leading. Am I more 81? Am I more 82? So I'll see what the tap value gives me, and then personally, I like them to be nice round numbers. So then I'll just type in, okay, yep, no, actually, I want this to be 82. And that's how you can get that going. So that's the easy way to do tap tempo changes after the fact inside of your sessions.
Nice.
So let me throw it back. I think it's back to Drew now, right? On the round, we're gonna go round and round.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's. I'll do a couple more. Some more keyboard shortcut stuff. Again, it's focused on the navigating and zooming and so forth. One of the things that I like to do, we left off with R and T to zoom in and zoom out, but there are some times where you might want to, if you're zoomed way in and you're finishing some editing and you want to just sort of get back out. One I use quite a lot is the, control option command, and then either the up arrow or the down arrow. Either one works, and that'll take you all the way in. You also have, and this was a little nugget that Monty hit this on too, is down here in the bottom right-hand corner. This is probably might be kind of hard to see, but right here in this little box right here, down in the bottom corner, if you double click on that, it gives you, it's the same thing, right? So you get that zoom in, zoom out to the entire session, which is really awesome.
Nice.
Couple of other zoom things, like, when tracks are selected, if we control up and down arrow, we'll do whatever tracks are selected. So if you have one track selected, that'll control the height of that one. If you have multiple tracks, a part of a group, they'll all go. If you add option in, they'll all go relative to each other. So you can see I now have some that are smaller, and they'll keep their relativeness to each other as they're zooming in and out. So these guys are really helping you get around and manage your session. Another one, if we option command and the left and right brackets,
I use this one all the time. Yeah. Especially if you're recording at reasonable levels, sometimes you feel like your waveforms, it can be hard to see, especially when you zoom out, right? So yeah. What's that again? It's option command bracket.
Option command and your left and right brackets. And then if you're not sure where you want to be, if you add control, then it'll and hit the left bracket, it'll reset it. Which is always nice to kind of, if you're not sure where's the actual, and reset, then that'll get you there. And then what else? So how about selections? So when you're making selections, and if you're zoomed in and you're trying to do, and again, putting some of these together, it's probably a good idea to zoom up your waveforms when you're making an edit selection. And then when you're really zoomed in, it's kind of hard to see exactly what's going on. So I might zoom in and shift click. I'm shift clicking to make that selection. And then this is a simple one, but the left and right arrow, right? If I hit the right arrow, it takes me to the other edge of my edit without me having to redo my zoom. And then I can shift click. Yeah, so I can shift click and get in really tight and go, okay, that's exactly where I want to be. And that was more easily done by just staying at the zoom level and hitting that left and right arrow key.
That's really cool. I love that it doesn't move. It doesn't mess up your selection that you already have going. It just lets you see a different part of it.
Exactly.
Nice. Awesome, dude. Well, thank you for blowing everyone's minds. And Matt, you get to follow that one up.
Alrighty. So yeah, let's talk about some MIDI stuff. One cool thing that's hidden in here that you might not know about in the MIDI workflow, so that's this little MIDI DIN connector button up here in the workflow menu. There's this MIDI keyboard, which is just how to play the MIDI instruments with the actual computer keyboard. But if you leave that off and just adjust the velocity, so you see it's at 80 right now. When I select these notes, every time I select a note, it triggers the sound of the instrument. Say you're doing a lot of MIDI editing where you just need to be visual. You don't necessarily need to hear every single note every time you select it. You can change this MIDI velocity for the MIDI keyboard, and that actually changes the MIDI preview volume as well. So if I drop that down to 1, now I won't hear anything when I select.
Oh, yeah, so you don't get that,
exactly,
where it plays
So
every note you're selecting.
Yeah, if you're manually editing a bunch of clips in a row and you don't want to hear that clang every single time, or if you just want to make it a little bit quieter, this velocity right here will do that.
That's awesome. And of course, you can also turn up to 127 if you're really feeling it, right?
Yeah, if you really want to punish yourself that day, crank it up.
Love it.
Right on. So another Luna one I got on the manage page in Luna. Next to all of the installed extensions or instruments, there's the 3 little dots. If you go to one of the sample-based instruments like Reverb, for example, and you go to download settings, you can actually choose where you want to keep the samples. So say you don't have enough space on your main OS drive and you have another SSD connected, has to be an SSD for this particular use case. You can actually select to install the sample-based instruments on your external SSD. It's a great way to free up space on your main drive. Just be sure that the drive is, like I said, SSD, formatted in AFPS, and it's got to be either USB 3, 3.1, PCIe, or Thunderbolt for compatibility.
That's really cool. That's nice to be able to have that flexibility, and it's just a ... to find that one. I love it.
Yep, nice and easy. I'll do one more here. So I think Drew kind of touched on this earlier, where if you have like a clip highlighted and you press F, it'll auto add fades. Let me zoom in and do that again. So I just have the clip selected, press F, it auto adds fades at the beginning and the end. You can actually determine, how long you want those fades to be. If you click the diamond icon and go to settings, on the options tab here, this fade length, you can type in whatever you want here, and that'll actually change the length of the fades that get added. So now that I changed it to 100, getting some crazy feedback.
Monty's got a jam happening there.
Yeah. Anyways, now that I change it to a smaller value, it'll add smaller fades when I hit F on that. You can't even see them; they're so small. So it's a cool way to kind of customize that F key command.
That was rad.
That's great. You can do bulk ones too. If you make a selection throughout the entire track and just hit the F key, it'll do fades across the entire track.
Yeah, it does it for every single clip you have selected. So nice way to clean things up quick and easily.
Love it. All right, moving to Monty. What's your next one?
Yeah, I'm going to move to the mixer view and talk a little bit about the plugins workflow and just being able to quickly go in and command click to disable and option click to drag and copy your plugins, which is a super fast way of working. And in general, the same thing applies to sends, and you can do the same thing with the send, and you can option drag and copy a send.
Yeah, I use that. I use that literally nonstop. Like I'll set it up on one track, and it's just copy, and it's such a powerful way to do it.
Yep, and to make that workflow even faster, if you wanted to do a copy workflow, you could click copy here. And click here, and you can do a paste workflow by dragging, and that's pretty much like the fastest way to do it if you wanted to do like across several tracks at once. But you can do the same thing with power and powering on and off plugins and removing plugins. So this modifier section is like my next tip. Just use this as much as possible. Sometimes you can forget it's there; it's kind of tucked away.
Yep,
but it does
forget about it all
up.
the time.
When you're setting up a mix, it's like the first thing I do is check this out and say, okay, how quickly can I put these plugins in place, after I group. The other one is in this section is the console workflow, which is, API Vision is like an amazing creation by Universal Audio. I use it on everything now, like literally everything.
Yep.
And one of the workflows you can do is you can do swipe disable and you can do swipe enable. So like being able to just swipe across tracks that you want API vision on is pretty clutch, and that also works for the bus channels and things like that as well.
Nice. So that's a really easy way to just quickly paint your whole session with vision.
Yep. And sometimes I am really lazy and I don't want to go through this process, so I'll swipe. And the other thing you can do is you can switch all of them in section modes here. So you can, these are like just really quick editing workflows in the mixer view. For my next one is the delay section, and we talked about this in the previous office hours. But the delay, if you have a track where you have some feel that you want to change, without having to get into moving the clip by itself, this will actually delay, say, this entire track. So getting back into my mixer view, if I wanted to delay that track, I can just click here and type in, I want it to be, 12 milliseconds, and you can hold down control to do granular edits as well. So this is a very fast way of getting into a delay field type of thing.
Nice. Yeah.
Also good for phase.
I was like, yeah, that was one of when that feature launched just a couple months ago. We did a nice little deep dive show about all the different ways that you can put that to use, and it went from like, all right, maybe I'd use it for this one thing, and then through making the episode, we're like, oh shit, there's like 5, 6, 7 different ways to use track delays that are both creative and functional.
Yeah. The next one I have is a simple one. Some of these features are not necessarily features. It's more like my just absolute love and passion for Universal Audio plugins. So the Neve summing slot, that's specifically, it's the Neve. I like a lot of character in my tracks. And the low feature, switching this little button low brings the bass, man. It brings the feel. And a lot of
hands up if you are addicted to the low impedance setting on the Neve.
Both hands up.
That's all day, man. Like, so I don't even like high just gets no love. Sorry guys, I'll go team. Sorry, low. That's
low.
it. Like, leave it there. I can do a preset with this, and that's it.
That's it. So, exactly.
Yeah. So
the question is, Monty,
so that's
after you go into low, are you a good boy and turn your trim down 2 dB as well to gain compensate it, or do you leave it at 0?
No. Like it depends. It depends on what the track is. But I'm a very aggressive guy. I like to hear it just smash, and I'll try to slam it as much as possible sometimes to get a lot of character out of my tracks. But if you want to be nice, trim.
Yeah, every once in a while,
if you want.
The hands are going to the ceiling right now in the chat.
Yeah, man.
I think everyone's with you.
Low is it.
It's always low on the Neve.
Oh man, Statue of Liberty emoji.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
New York represent. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So let's see. One more along those same lines is the beloved or is it tape slot? And I did not know this until I watched Office Hours, actually. But you can get into assigning tape, and you can get in and you can assign 4 different slots for tape. And just being able to switch that out in a session is really clutch. Just having different tape slots or different tapes selected for different groups, I've done that. Got different feel. My drums will be in one slot, my guitars in another, things like that. And I can get like oxide on one type of feel and then studio on another, which is like super clutch. So this tape slot is getting my next feature.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Being able to load up 4 different tape machines. Like, we've joked a few times in Office Hours about how, like, dude, to have 4 actual tape machines in the studio, you'd be spending so much. You'd be spending over $1,000 on tape alone, just to fill up those machines. So the fact that you can do it with a click of a button in here, huge game changer right there.
Yeah, and sometimes it depends on like the feel of the track. You can get different sonics and saturation, tape saturation out of it. And there's some tips coming up later that some of the other guys are talking about. But there's lots of different feel things you can get into different tracks with that type of thing. Hip hop or R&B, there's some cool stuff you can get into.
Absolutely. Nice. All right. Well, let me. I think it's my turn now. So I'm gonna talk about presets, because we're gonna dive in a little bit here into some plugin stuff. So I've pulled up my absolute favorite, one of my favorite plugins in the world, the SSL 4000E channel. So as you guys know, this is kind of the default settings. This is how it pulls up. But my first tip here, I've talked about it a few times, is the importance of, if you look at this and you're like, oh man, actually I really want the threshold to be here. I always use a fast release. Range, of course I'm going to want some range on my expander, but I also want a fast release, high pass everything. I always want the EQ in. I always want, if you look at this and you're like, all right, this is actually where I want this plugin to start. While Luna doesn't have a custom user starting point yet, what you can do is you can come over here, hit save yourself a custom preset, and we'll call this Ben Default 2021 because I've got multiple defaults in here. Hit save. I'm going to use my trick from earlier and press Option and close this folder. And you'll see down here, as I mentioned, I do have multiple defaults. Create yourself a default setting that you like. And this is not just for defaults. This is also for useful settings, things that you've dialed in the past. So, like, say you got a killer drum sound out of a plugin, man. Just get into a habit of saving yourself presets, because it's such a great feeling to kind of pull up a kick drum preset that worked on a mix from a year ago. You pull it up on a new mix. You're like, oh man, I'm like halfway there already. Just want to tweak this. There it is. So, kind of building yourself this library of presets is just, I can't recommend it enough, and it's so easy to do, both in Luna, but also if you guys are not in Luna, and now that we're talking about UAD, I want to talk nice and broadly here. In doesn't matter what DAW you're in, UAD plugins, at the bottom of your UAD plugins, there's this folder icon. If you use this to save your presets rather than the built-in one, because Pro Tools has its presets, Logic, they have their presets, and you'll find all the artist presets and factory presets are loaded in there for you. But to be able to use it in console, in Luna, in Ableton Live, Logic, to use it in any DAW and have your UAD presets go from one to another, using this folder down here to load and save your presets means that they're available no matter what DAW you're using. And of course, for Luna, these all save to the same folder as the Luna ones. So it's a great way to have presets travel back and forth if you're working with multiple DAWs. Presets, save them.
And Ben, don't you also have a setup for those that get backed up to Dropbox? Like, so you're protecting those presets, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I use a program called ChronoSync that synchronizes my user preset folder, puts it up into a Dropbox folder. And I've got that synchronizing to multiple computers. That tip takes like 10 minutes to fully explain. So we'll do a deep dive in the future of how I share presets with folks. And if you guys want to see that, let us know. Nice. But my next one here, we're gonna get very specific now in some plugins, and talking about. I was going through my delay folder because delays are kind of my favorite things. And I wanted to give a couple of specific tips around the Korg SDD. If you guys don't already know, this plugin sounds crazy good.
It's freaking good, man.
It's such a good one. It's slightly simple, but it's got an analog sound to. It's got just this analog digital. It's a digital delay, but when I say it sounds analog, it's because you can drive into it. It's got a level knob here, and as you push this delay, it pushes back in a really cool way. But the two things I really wanted to highlight with this one is the effect mode. There's 5 of them in there, and one of them is great. Number 2, I'll be honest, I only really use number 2 because it's this cool out of phase mono in, stereo out, and the stereo delays are out of phase from each other, and it sounds wide and beautiful. So if you've ever tried this plugin out and it didn't quite grab your ear right away, you might have not been using mode number 2. So that's tip number 1. Yeah. Tip number 2, and this is going to apply to all the UAD delay plugins, which I think is really, really rad. But it's the easiest to show here in the Korg. Is all of the original units, they may have like a tap tempo, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to synchronize perfectly to your tempo. But of course, the UAD versions, you can put it in sync mode, and you can tell it exactly what subdivision you would like the delays to happen in. So let's say, I want a dotted eighth, but then I listen back to it and I'm like, for this track, it'd be cool if the delays could just be like a little bit more behind the beat. But I'm locked in with a sync. The cool thing that you can do is you can take, when you hit the sync, it's moving the delay time around. So let me, this is the dotted eighth, 548. When I go back into sync, and let's say I go to an eighth note, we're now down to 365. So that time keeps up as you change those divisions. So if you're thinking of how I'm thinking, what I'm going to do is I want to lay this delay back. I'm just going to bump that delay time up 1, 2, 3 clicks, just a couple of milliseconds longer on that delay. It's still kind of in rhythm, but it's kind of behind the beat a little bit, and you're welcome. Just do this next time you guys are mixing. Hit sync, find your subdivision, take it out of sync, give it a little bit of a nudge, a little something, and your mixes will thank me later. So another delay tip, and this is one I learned from Office Hours, is using the precision delay. This is correct me if I'm wrong, guys. This is one of the ones that's included in Analog Classics that every Apollo owner has.
Yep. Yeah.
So, again, there's some incredible presets. There's some great artist presets available for it. As you can see, I've got a couple of Ben presets in here, so I'm just going to pull up my Ben Ping Pong. So, again, once I find a delay sound I kind of like, I kind of come back to the same sounds over and over again. So I always prepare myself a couple of presets that I like. And of course, we want fully wet here for this example. One of the things, though, Precision Delay Mod it's a fairly transparent, fairly clean. You've got filtering available, so you can high pass and low pass filter a little bit, but it doesn't have like an analog character to it. Well, you know what you can do to quickly change that situation is you can pair that with something that is very, very analog. So let's say, so now I can go out of my precision delay mod where I've got this delay exactly how I like it sounding, but, I want to kind of tailor it a little bit. Follow that up with something, say like the Neve 1084. And of course, hopefully, if you guys have watched any episodes around the Neve stuff, you'll know that, by default, you're going to be adjusting. When you're doing this in a mix scenario, you're going to be using the line gain knob. So of course, if you bring this back, you're now, if I've added 20 dB of gain to it, so I would crank it up here to kind of saturate it a little bit, and then come over here to the fader and pull that down to equal it out. But if you want to go nuts, if you want to go absolutely insane with a lot of these UAD plugins, if you click over into the mic range, you're now driving at 50, 60, 80 dB of gain. You can go absolutely insane with this.
Please, be careful.
Exactly. Do this carefully, guys. But you can really drive it hard. You can add a little or a lot of texture. You've got your output fader here, and we've talked about this before. You've got another gain stage knob down here. So using these to kind of compensate, allow you to really drive it, saturate it, add some analog color to a clean delay. On top of that, you can come in and you can filter it, right? You can use the Neve high pass, low pass filters, maybe add some mid range to it. It's just a really fun way to take a delay and kind of customize how it sounds a little bit further than you could just do inside the one plugin. So I love pairing that together. And then I got one more delay one. This is one of my favorite categories. And this is the Galaxy Tape Echo. So my tip around Galaxy Tape Echo involves the Echo pan and the Reverb pan. One of the really cool things about Galaxy is that you get both. You get both a tape echo, and you also get kind of a spring reverb happening in there. So what I love to do is kind of just split those two apart just a little bit, so that way getting a little delay over here, getting a little reverb happening over here. And of course, you can come in here on the tape loop, we've all been getting spoiled over here with the new UA effects pedals. But what's cool is that this one's not in the UA effects pedal, just to be clear. But what is cool is that it does have the 3 different tape styles. So you've got new tape, which is full fidelity. It's what it was supposed to sound like out of the box. You've got a gently used one, and then you've got, of course, a very old crusty tape. So it's, again, these are kind of, they alter the tone, they alter the wow and flutter. It's really, really cool, kind of how this can shape the sound of your delays on top of the controls, obviously, that you have over the delay. And so that's all my delay tips. Oh, actually, that's not all my delay tips. I got one more delay tip, which is the Lexicon 480. I don't know, you guys probably, if you're like me, you think of the 480, you're thinking this is a reverb, right? This is beautiful plates, amazing halls, but if you've ever clicked in here, it's actually got some effects and delays as well. And at least myself, I know I constantly sleep on these. So I'm sure a lot of people out in the world do as well. But man, the effects, there's some really cool illusions, some slaps, some tremolos, some stereo. There's some wild effects that were in the 480. And you guys are probably seeing, I'm also doing a little trick here where if you click on up here in the screen, you couldn't do this on the real thing. On the real device, obviously, you would have to come down here and be going from bank to bank. But since we're in the plugin world, you can come up here and you can say, I want select rooms, and I'd like the large wood room. I love being able to kind of quickly get from program to program, but at the same time, you can use it like it was intended by using the program and the bank buttons down below. And this is one that, I don't know, you probably have seen this plugin a lot, but may have never noticed there's an A/B button here. If you've ever asked yourself, what does that A/B button do? Let me direct you to the question mark at the bottom right-hand side of the plugin.
Hey, imagine that.
All these UAD plugins, guys, this is my tip. I'm being facetious here, but guys, the manual is always just a click away. So hitting the question mark at the bottom of any UAD plugin, if you're ever like, dude, what is the B machine? What does this do? Well, I'll tell you guys what it does because I read the manual on Friday. You can actually load up two different algorithms inside of the 480L. So you can have an A setting and a B setting. You can't use them simultaneously. Like it is a this or that. I don't believe there's tails or trails between the two. So, but it is a great use of say you're going to the bridge and you want your reverb to go from this really long thing to a short thing or vice versa. This is a great way without having to load another plugin to get two different effect settings happening instantly and be able to switch between them. It switches the programs, the knobs, as you guys can see. Everything changes between the two machines. But I didn't know that this was here. And speaking of
also it's really good at it's when you're trying to decide, do I want this effect or that effect? So it's as you're building your mix, it gives you it's an easy way of switching from one program that's in one bank to another one that's in a completely different bank to be able to do a quicker A/B,
Mm-hmm, exactly. And of course, there's a cool thing. There's this little open arrow, and when you hit that, you can adjust your input gain, you can adjust your output level, you can turn link, you can unlink these two. And there's one more little red arrow right here on the circuit board, and when you click on it, you'll notice there's a random hall bug fix. You guys probably noticed where I left the manual, right? It was what they discovered is when they were making this plugin, they discovered that there was actually a bug in the original code for random hall where it had a different sound to it than what they actually intended it to be. So by default, that bug is left in because this is the UAD way is to do warts and all. It's however it was in the real world is how it is in the plugin. So that's by default. It's on. The bug is turned on. But if you ever want to experience what it's like without the random hall bug on, click that little button right there. And I think it's the other way around. They fixed it, and you can turn the bug back on. My bad. Yeah. So the fix is on. You can turn the fix off if you want the authentic. Exactly how the old ones are broken. Read the manual. Make yourself some presets. Pair your delays together. What more can I say? All right, let's keep moving, guys. I don't know what our pace is like, but it feels like we might need to go faster if we're gonna be here for 3 hours.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
We promised 100 tips. We were gonna deliver 100 tips, even if we're here all day. All right, back to Drew.
Yeah, mine will be fast. So my next one is sequentially numbering of inputs and outputs. So, for example, let's say you're doing, I do this all the time if I'm tracking drums and I've got a bunch of tracks, I can start out by selecting those tracks and then if I come up here to the inputs, the key commands are Shift Option Command. So I'm going to hold down the keyboard shortcuts and click input on the first one. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to click while continuing to hold the modifiers. I'm going to click on the first track that I want. And as you can see, Luna has sequentially numbered the inputs for me. And the same thing works with outputs. Don't need to show that, but it's the same basic idea. So that was there's sequential renumbering. That one's quick, right?
Nice.
Another one is direct the direct inputting of numeric data inside of Luna's mixer. So headroom and trim, we can of course click and drag these, but you might not know that you can simply double click and it'll bring up a box, a numeric entry box. And in the case of the headroom knob where things are stepped, it'll show you as well. So that works wherever that occurs. So for example, there was a question in the chat about delay, right? So if you really need a precise delay, if you really need 1.1 milliseconds of delay, well, there's no better way to do that than to simply load it in. Same holds true for faders. So if I just click, I can numerically enter faders, pan knobs as well. And so you get the idea there. Direct entry of values into the GUI.
Nice.
How about simple pan mode? That's one we talked about early on, like probably within the first week or two, was one of the sort of hidden features. If you right click on a track, a stereo track's pan knob, or either one of the pan knobs, you'll notice that. And actually, I can kind of show two things here at once. One is the simple pan option, where if I choose simple pan, it turns the two stereo knobs into a simple balance knob, which is very handy.
I love that one.
By the way, yeah, that's a great
Huge,
one.
yeah.
And when we originally showed it, it only worked for stereo tracks, but it also now works on buses as well. So that's something that's new since we've shown it last.
Nice. Good work at the feedback button there, Drew.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it worked. And then I guess while I'm here, I can show you another one, which is copy to queues and copy to sends. Mm-hmm. So this is a really great workflow if you need to do a headphone mix, right? Let me bring up this queue here. If you need to do a headphone mix, and you've got a great monitor mix happening, if you right click on a fader cap, if you right click on the fader cap, you can see that it brings up the option to copy these levels to a queue. So if I do this, you can see that Q1 now has taken on my monitor mix. This is a great way of, you build a nice monitor mix and you want to give that to the artist and build off of that. You can do that. You also have the ability to do that in the sends, which is right clicking on a pan knob, and you can bring that to the sends. This is cool if you're trying to do like a parallel workflow maybe, and you want to send the same balance that you've got going to the main mix also to your parallel bus. This is an easy way to copy those balances up to the send. Yeah, and let's see. Another quick one that I can do here while we're on this screen is something that I actually found out by accident, but I do quite often, and this kind of dovetails with what Monty was saying before. Is I don't know about you guys, but I'm using summing on my effects returns. Here we have a bus. We have a bus that's the 140 plate, and I just by default am just adding summing to all of my effects buses because it just it just sounds better, right? So if the effect sounds good,
Do you ever go in there and tweak with the headroom control to kind of exaggerate the effect?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like it literally is. Kind of what you were doing with the 1084, Ben. It's literally another layer of coloration and another layer of control on effects buses. And yeah, so really, really cool way of sort of just. I thought Capital Chambers couldn't sound any better, and turns out it can, which is kind of shocking when you think about it. But
totally.
So yeah.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, I guess that's good. Yeah, let's
keep it rolling. Let's
kick it
throw it
on
over to Matt.
Throw it over to Matt.
Right on. I got 4 more Luna specific ones that I'll fly through here.
Sick.
So cool one is you could actually, so say you're using ARP, the MIDI effect that comes with Luna, the arpeggiator. You can actually print that to a new track. I use this all the time if I got my main arpeggio going with the ARP plugin, but I want to add some variation, change one note here and there. Mm-hmm. This is a really cool way to do that. So it uses the IEC driver that's built into Mac OS. I won't go over how to set that up. You can Google how to set up the IEC driver. It's pretty straightforward. But the way I'm doing this is basically I have a MIDI clip with just a chord in the source track. So that's the track that has ARP loaded on it. I'm going to set the MIDI output to the IEC driver. Then I created a new instrument track here that I'm going to print to. So I set the input to the IEC driver. So basically, the output is the same as the input. It's sending MIDI from this track to this track. Now, if I record arm this track and record arm the transport, it'll actually print the output of ARP to this new clip. So then I can come in here and edit it around. So yeah, really cool for adding subtle little variations to your ARP patterns. And you can do this with any MIDI plugin that generates MIDI, any kind of MIDI effects plugin. It's not just ARP.
Nice. I like that.
That's a cool one. Yeah, a couple quick and easy ones. There's a way to, by default, this is all the rulers that Luna shows up here. If you want to customize that, you can click these 3 little lines, or 3 little dots right here. It brings up the timeline settings window, and you can clean up the ruler section if you wanted to. Say there were some things in here that you don't use, maybe you never loop, you can hide that. Just kind of cleans up the workspace a little bit. And you can also do the same thing for some of the clip properties. And those are, when you double click on the clip header, it brings up this little window. You can hide some of those as well. And you can even hide the grid lines if you want to completely go off-road.
If you really want to treat it like a tape machine where there is no grid, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm allergic to that personally, but
Yeah.
Stay on the grid, kids. It's for your own health.
And similar, you can actually customize the Luna workspace itself. So up here in the toolbar, this view button, you click on that, it brings up these 4 little options, and you can use these to basically show and hide different aspects of the Luna window. So I can hide the tracks list, I can hide the focus channel, I can hide the monitor section, all that. So yeah, if there's something that you don't need to use, or you just want more timeline space, you can hide some of that stuff and widen the Luna window a little bit.
And those are per window, right? So like if you do an alternate window, you can make one of. Can you make one of them with less stuff and one with more stuff?
Yeah, exactly. It is per window. So yeah, you could have like one that's the mixer with your monitor section, everything hidden. You can have another that's the timeline with the full view. Yeah, it's separate from window to window, which is really cool.
Hell yeah.
Cool. And the last Luna thing I'll cover is set bar 1, which is an option in the edit menu here.
Yes.
Set bar 1. So say that you didn't start your project right at bar 1 because you're a normal, rational person. So like I started mine on 5 here because I want a little bit of space. I don't want to be always dropping in on bar 1. But you want your bars to line up for the song as a whole. Click where you want the bar 1 to go. I'm going to start at my intro marker. Then you go edit, set bar 1. It'll set wherever you had the playhead to bar 1. It'll actually add negative bars before that. So yeah, it doesn't change the way things are laid out in the timeline. Just make sure that now I know that bar 17 down here is actually bar 17. I don't have to do math to subtract whatever the empty space is at the beginning.
That's so helpful. Super helpful,
for
especially if you're
probably
following
every
along.
project.
Yeah, like and I know people that like do stuff with like charts, right? If you printed out music for it, make a big difference there. All being able to speak the same bar numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll throw it over to Monty now.
All right, on to you, Monty.
Yeah. I'm going to switch over to some sound design-y type stuff. So I tend to do a lot of buses in my tracks, and I'll start with some bass stuff. So what I like to do is on my, let's see if I can find my bass. Here it is. On my bass bus, I have several bass channels on this song specifically, but I have SVT on it. Mm-hmm. This thing is sick. It's great for toning or getting some tone crafting for basses. I don't have a track, I think, in existence that doesn't have this on it somewhere because it's just that good.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing. I've done sessions as a bass player with just this plugin, and people thought I had a whole rig. It's amazing. But then the gem is that I'll run that with a send over into the Subsynth plugin, mm-hmm. and I'll mess around with some of this ooey gooey stuff over here within the harmonics. So, and I can just add more character to what the SVT already does naturally.
Actually, Monty, I think we're just seeing your Luna window. Are your plugin windows? Looks like they're not showing up on our share here.
Oh, okay. Well, 1 second. I guess I have to reshare.
Yeah, all good. I'll hide you for a second.
Okay.
You back?
1 second. Trying to find share. Okay.
There we
Let's
go.
try it again.
There we go. Now we see it.
Haha. Magic. Okay. So let's go back. So yeah, SVT. This is the plugin. This is what I mean by tone crafting. You can tone craft, EQ your bass.
Oh
Going
shit!
into-
Oh, like plus 12
yeah.
at 300.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So I'll really craft out like, and this is like, I'll show you. Let's see. Take all my solos off for a second. So a lot of my basses are being driven by a certain feel. So all of this is just really just meant to be basically a sound design type thing. So wait for it to come back in here.
It's like we're getting some solo safe stuff coming through too.
Oh, that's what's happening. I was like, what's going on? Okay. So I want to make sure I keep this on for a second because my next thing is that, but like I'll just skip to that. So a lot of the effects I have here, SVT, subsynth, all this stuff is coming through on buses, and I can add character through my buses this way. So
So you're like
so they
driving
have the-
into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm driving into like kind of like a outboard gear type thing to get some effects, and so on the subsynth plugin, I can add more drive, I can add more squeeze on the basses. I can low cut things like that. I can do the mono thing here for basses as well. And then I have the auto biscuit, if you want to say it like that. I call it the biscuit plugin. So if you have like some drums and you want to add some lo-fi vibes or distortion, this is awesome. And I do not use plugin presets on this just because I like to kind of experiment to see what sounds good for that sound specifically. And I'll just go crazy in here, man, just like clicking everything just to see what happens.
You could spend days of your life in this one plugin, right?
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. I've had like days where I've spent maybe 30 or 40 minutes just tone crafting with this thing, and I'll throw drums in it, basses, vocals. I'll throw anything in this, and I keep it as a bus as a send for that reason because anything in my track I can automate it into this, and you can automate all these parameters as well. So, just lots of fun with this.
That one you get some wild sounds.
Yeah. Likewise, at the beginning of my track, that the Rhodes is going through the Moog filter, and this thing is just as awesome. Same thing. I mean, you can just get really crazy with the LFOs. Just get sounds that you're not really going to get out of the natural VST. So you can just really get crazy with like sound design stuff. So these are like my go-to like sound crafting preset type things in my sessions with Luna.
Hell yeah, dude! Nice. That Moog filter, man, like that's one of my all-time favorites for adding vibe and motion and just all sorts of good stuff to
Great
tracks.
modulation. Yeah, totally.
I run tambourines through it. Tambourine,
Really?
believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's any
That's awesome.
shakers and tambourines. It'll take a nasty sampled tambourine and shaker and like turn it into something like way more organic just with the drive.
Wow, that's
super
really cool.
simple. Yeah.
Stealing that idea, Drew, with another gem, man. You have gems
All the time,
Great
all the
gems, man.
time.
Yeah, love it.
Hell yeah!
it.
All right, well, let me keep this train moving into probably some of my absolute favorite plugins in the world. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love 1176s. I have 5 ones here, real ones here in my studio. Like I am addicted to the 1176 sound. So just wanted to make sure everyone knows that inside UAD with the 1176, there's a couple of really key things that you guys should be checking out with this. 2 of them are actually brand new features. So in I think it was like 1 or 2 software releases ago, they gave it a new GUI, but they also gave it some new features. One of them being the mix knob. So you can now blend. You can punish and blend is how I like to treat it. So like you can crank up the input, really over compress it, and then come in here and just use sprinkle the taste. So you can pepper it in there exactly how you like it. So I love getting the addition of the mix knob, in addition to the headroom control, which I'll talk about here in a second. But the other one is on the release. There's this line above the release that when you click on that, it pulls the knob up. And what that's doing is it's similar to like what the 2500 has with the thrust circuit. It's essentially a sidechain filter. It just kind of tilts the sound, so it pays less attention to the lows and a little bit more attention to the highs. So if you feel like the kick drum or the bass is pumping your 1176 too hard, no need to back off on the input. Leave it cranking. Just come over here and just hit the filter, the sidechain filter, and that allows you to just kind of tilts what the compressor is listening to. It doesn't change what you hear; it just changes what the compressor hears. So those are two new features that they just added that I think are game changers for using the 1176s, and that's in all of the collections. So the A, the AE, and the Revision E all have those new features. And of course,
something that's kind of counterintuitive. Something that's kind of counterintuitive with that, Ben, is when you engage that filter, people are used to seeing the compression reduce, and in this case, it actually can increase because it's becoming more sensitive based on the content. If you have a lot of high frequency content, you can actually get more compression, which is somewhat counterintuitive, which people are not used to.
Totally, that's a great tip. So sidechain modes, blend modes. And then, I said I was going to come back and talk about it. You'll find the HR control. You'll find this in a lot of UAD plugins. I use it a lot when it comes to compressors. But essentially what this is your headroom control. So this is adjusting what the unit thinks is unity gain, where that 0 dB, where the whole thing is calibrated from. This allows you to move that up and down by a couple of dBs. So where I find myself using this all the time is, a lot of times I'll mix, I'll get it like, all right, I love how my drums are sounding through these settings. And then like 10 minutes later, I'm like, dude, does everything feel a little crunchy, a little too compressed? And then I open up my 1176 and of course the meter's going nuts. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Yep. You definitely overdid it, Ben. So I got two solutions. I got multiple solutions to this to my overcompression problem. One is I could use the mix knob. I could just blend in. I could keep it exactly where it is, but just bring back some of the dry signal. That's one solution. I could take reduce the input. That would also give me less compression. But it's also this is changing the gain, staging around. This is changing a lot of things about the tone of the compressor. Similarly, the mix knob. These may not always be the perfect solution. So sometimes what I end up doing is I'll use this headroom control because this is basically just allowing the gain, everything about it to stay about where it is, but just kind of opens the ceiling up a little bit to my compressor, and both for the compression amount, but also the tone of it. It kind of just moves that operating point. So if you ever find yourself kind of over compressing stuff, but you're afraid to go in and change your settings, just lift the headroom knob a little bit, and it for me, 9 times out of 10, like 1 or 2 clicks on the headroom control, and I've solved my overcompression issues with that. And of course, 1170. I'd be remiss if I didn't make sure that everybody here. I want to make sure everyone at home knows that with an 1176, you're not limited to just pressing one of those buttons. You can press 2, you can press 3, you can press all 4 of them, all buttons in mode. If you haven't done this already, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but you're welcome. It sounds incredible. This is the sound that made so many records sound. This is put this on a drum room mic, put this on a bass, put this on a vocal. I saw they use this on Adele's vocal, like all buttons in. And of course, you're gonna get it's gnarly. It sounds intense. So this is really where the mix knob is going to help you out. Headroom control is probably not going to save you in this case. You're going to need to use the mix knob to save you from this.
Do you parallel compress when you use this in all buttons in mode?
Usually, unless it's on like a drum room where like that's the sound, and then I'm blending that mic in with other mics. But if you're in all buttons, if you know what this sounds like, and it can be intense. Intense in a really great way. Adds a lot of energy, a lot of pumping, a lot of just try it out. Make sure you guys are using the all buttons mode as often as possible. But the other thing I wanted to bring up around 1176 is I mentioned there's the collection, the 1176 collection in UA. The one that's really special to me, honestly, is the anniversary edition, the AE. So it's a black faceplate, but with a blue stripe, and they only made these, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they only made a couple hundred of these. Like these are not widely found out in the world. But there's two things especially about this revision that I find myself using all the time. And you'll notice it right away. One of them is this 2-to-1 ratio. So you get a much gentler kind of compression ratio to it. It's a very gentle curve. A normal 1176 starts at 4. So being able to get that 2-to-1 ratio, I find myself coming to this one all the time for that. And the other most important one to me is on the attack knob. It has a slow mode. So a slow attack means more transient is getting through. It's the most important thing for me when I'm working on drums. When I'm trying to compress stuff, if I want to let more of that transient through than what an 1176 would naturally allow me to do on, say, 1, be able to click into the slow mode. Game changer right there. That's I use that all the time. So I find myself, this is kind of one of my go-to 1176s a lot of times. But of course, you gotta try them all. You gotta pop them all open at least once or twice to really learn the differences yourselves.
Yeah, and to tie it into what you just said a minute ago, Ben, if you find that you're always having to parallel when using an 1176, this can be a great alternative because that slow mode gets you, it moves the attack time to about 10 milliseconds as opposed to 800 to 20 microseconds. So like if you find that you only like 1176s in parallel, maybe you check this guy out. Maybe you like this one and you don't use parallel because it's got the slow mode.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's 1176, but I want to go back to its granddaddy, the 175 and 176. These are the tube versions. You'll notice they're very similar to 1176s. But they're very different. These are a little bit older, more color, more saturation, more drive. But this was, Bill Putnam Sr. This was his search for the perfect compressor, which was fast and able to help control levels in a very musical way. 175, 176 are incredible ones along that path. Quick tip for this one, and again, you would find this if you'd read the manual. By default, your stepped inputs, so you're going up and down by 2 dBs. But if you've ever asked yourself, what is that vernier knob? What does it do? Like you click it and nothing seems to happen. Like the sound doesn't change. You're like, what is vernier? Vernier, on the original devices, this was a knob that let you go plus or minus 1 dB into the gain. So on the original units, it's basically like a little 1 dB trim. If you needed to be in between 2 settings, you would use the vernier to kind of get it right in between the 2. On the plug-in version, when you switch on the vernier, this is no longer a stepped control. It is now fully variable. So again, if you want to get, if you don't want 22, you don't want 24, you want 23, this allows you to get in there and get that value precisely, and same for the output. So it takes them from being step knobs to being fully variable, and this works on both the 175 and the 176 plugins. So now, if you didn't know what vernier is, now you do. And lastly, another one of my absolute favorites. This lives on every single one of my mixes I've done for the last 6, 7, 8 years. The Varimu. This thing is absolutely incredible. It's such a great sounding plugin. But there's a couple unsung features about it, I feel. So obviously you control your input, your gain staging, how hard you're driving the compressor with one knob, and this affects both sides. You've got some familiar faces here, right? You've got a headroom control for when you've overcompressed things. You've got a sidechain high pass to be able to make it pump a little bit less on the lows. But what a lot of people sleep on is this one right here, the input and output left, right, MS. If you're keyed into what we've been showing around the Fairchild compressors, you know that this MS mode is incredibly valuable. So being able to switch this in now, instead of left and right as my 2 channels, I've now got middle and sides as my 2 channels. So of course, if you leave your side chains linked, they're gonna compress together and your stereo image doesn't change. But what I actually kind of like doing is I like unlinking the side chain and unlinking the controls. So now I'm controlling my mid channel, and I can basically kick, bass, vocals. I can give those a certain threshold and a certain amount of output. And then I've got my sides where I've got guitars, synthesizers, drums. You've got all the other sauce of your mix happening on the side. You can compress those slightly differently, maybe a little bit less, but then with more output, you can give yourself a wider mix. And of course, you can have this be doing all that stuff dynamically, and it is incredibly powerful. So highly, highly recommend you guys try the Vari out in mid-side, which is, again, this is kind of a plugin only feature that you won't find on the hardware. So yeah, that's compressors. Those are all my compressor tips wrapped up as fast as I could.
Nice.
Great job.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Let's see, back around again to Matt. Or sorry, no, Drew. Drew's first.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Drew's
Yeah.
up.
So I'm going to show one that I've shown before, and it's how to use Luna's cues combined with the source selections in your control room area to use as like a reference mix or previous mix monitoring session. So you'll notice in this session down here at the bottom, I have 3 extra stereo tracks here, or stereo tracks that I brought in. These could be songs that I'm using for inspiration. They might be the previous version of this mix or any combination thereof. So I've brought them into the session, and they're carried to the top of the timeline. And then in the mixer, you'll notice what I've got going on here is I have them first of all have them muted, but also turned all the way down. The reason why I do that is in case I accidentally unmute everything, I don't get all of my reference stuff at full volume. So that's key here, that they're muted and turned all the way down. And then what I've done is, if you look up here, you can see that track 1 or reference mix number 1 has been sent to Q1, right? And I have them muted because I'm using Q1 and I don't want to hear it. But and then I have reference mix 2 set to Q2, and you'll notice that, look, I'm able to adjust their volumes, because these might be finished mastered albums, and they're not useful to me at full blast. So once you've set all of this up, you can now at any point in time come over here to your monitor source selection right here. And typically I have it on Q1 because that's what I'm monitoring, but typically you'd have it set here and you'd be monitoring your mix. And then what you can do is, every time you click this button, now that's reference number 1 and reference number 2 and reference number 3, and then back to my mix. So in that way, you're using Luna and its cue system to function as a reference tone generator, a reference song generator, or a previous mix generator. That one we've shown before.
I love that.
So that's
love that
that.
one.
Yeah, the next 2 I'll just talk about real quick because a lot of people have a lot of sessions and channel strips, right? So if you're not familiar with, in console, we have sessions where you can store the entire settings of all of the channels in console, and many users that have been with us for many years have countless console sessions stored and saved. But then also, and so this is something that I'm surprised by how many people don't know it exists, is that console also has channel strips. So if I come up here to my insert section and I click on this little downward facing arrow or triangle, I come into this area where you have you can store preset chains that include the unison slot as well as all of those slots. So if you are a previous console user, you probably have a lot of sessions and you probably have a lot of channel strips. And one thing you might not be aware of is that you can bring all of that into Luna. The safest way to do it is to turn on console tracking mode. What console tracking mode does is it keeps Luna from taking over console when it launches and when you switch sessions. So there is a way to do it without having to be in console tracking mode, but that's only for tracks that haven't previously had any inputs loaded into them. The safest way is to just turn on console tracking mode. And when you do that, once console tracking mode is turned on, then you can load a console session or even just one of those presets. And then when you arm a track in Luna, those settings get pulled in. This could include 20 tracks worth of settings that could get pulled in from your console sessions into your Luna sessions. Trying to do this super quick, so hopefully you get the idea there.
Dude, that one's such a huge shortcut. And I've used that in so many sessions where, like, make it all on console, save it there, and then pull up Luna, and Luna just rides piggyback to what you're doing in console.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a great way of using the channel strip feature of console, but also repurposing or being able to recycle all of those console sessions that you might have accumulated over the years.
Love it.
Let's see what else on my list. Let's do show hide mixer elements. So this little tip is just kind of highlighting an area of Luna that maybe not a lot of people spend a lot of time on, but it's actually a pretty cool way to use and customize the GUI. So we're talking about the show hide area here, and you may or may not know this, but you can use this to turn on and off different elements of the GUI. So I can literally turn all of these things off if I wanted to. Not that you would want to, but and it also shows you what you're as you scroll up and down. It's also visually showing you what's on screen. But that's kind of cool to be able to show and hide different elements if you just want to make the console row go away, or if you just, for example, I have my cues all blown out here, and if I just want to, in one fell swoop, make my cues go away, I could do that and then I can bring them back at any time, and I see them all, taking up all that screen real estate, and then, with a click, they go away, and so forth.
I love
but
that
also
one.
up here, yeah, that's a good one. I especially use it for the cues because I like to keep my cues all blown out here in this larger format. And so that's nice to be able to put them away. If I'm not doing that workflow, actually I can kind of quickly pivot to another tip, which is I just did this via screenshot, but this is something I do while I'm tracking, is I use Luna's alternate window feature in order to make a second window. And so during a tracking session, I'll work like this with my two windows. Now, normally I have it on a separate monitor, but for the purposes of the stream, I just kind of condensed it onto one monitor. But normally that right-hand side would be on my second monitor. And that way I can see all of my cues and my monitor mix over here while still having the timeline window, in place, this is a really great fast workflow, because at any given moment I can come over here and say, oh, okay, rack tom needs to be louder in the drummer's headphones, blah, blah, blah.
Nice.
But lastly over here, just also a little shout out to these little buttons over here that I don't know if we've ever covered these buttons, to be honest with you. But we have open, close, large, small, and fixed slots. So open, these are global buttons. So the open button will globally open and close all of the basically the GUI elements. Close will of course close them all up, so you can see them all close here. So this is a good way to being able to just sort of open everything up, close everything. And then also we have individually, you have the ability to show large or small versions of things. So for example, when it comes to your cues, I can globally expand all of my cues to their faders with one button push. They're now all open. So, which is cool. Or I can make them all small in that same way. And then lastly, we have fixed slots. This you might not be, you might not have used this one before, but I actually somehow when I'm mixing, I like to get into this mode where I've got fixed slots, and then I'll do large. So in this way, it kind of gives me the full blown picture of Luna's of Luna's, and I usually don't do all of those guys like that, but
All the sends.
you get the idea.
Yeah, so you see all your inserts, you see all your sends, everything is all the available real estate is reserved for the plugins.
Exactly. Yeah. So, let's see. Anything else? I think that
kind of surprised that we've
good.
never covered those ones before, because it's such a useful thing to be able to quickly open or close all the mixer elements, be able to make them large or small,
show and hide. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Cool.
Nice. All right, moving along to Matt.
Cool. So I'm gonna get into some plugin ones now.
Nice.
Start with the Distressor, one of my favorite plugins on the platform. Great compressor and a great distortion box, which is what I'm going to talk about now. By default, the compressor or Distressor loads up at 6-1. If you want to use this as a pure distortion box to get those great harmonics out of it, you can actually set it to 1-1. What I do is usually just crank up the input gain. If I want even more distortion, you can crank up the headroom knob, which pushes the signal into the processing harder. And then, of course, you're probably going to want to crank down your output gain. But then there's like 3 different flavors of distortion kind of hidden in here. You got the default settings where if you overdrive it, you'll get a certain sound. If you put in distortion 2, you get more second order harmonics. And then distortion 3 is third order. It's just like 3 different flavors of distortion, super easy to dial in. You can combine it with compression or not, whatever you want to do. And it sounds really good in parallel if you throw it on a parallel bus and really slam it.
Hell yeah.
The next one, similar to what Ben was talking about the 1176, on the Studio D, you can do multi-button modes. When you first pull up the plugin, it seems like there's only 4 settings, pretty simple plugin. But you can actually hold down Shift and do any combination of multiple buttons. which opens up a whole other world of possibilities for this plugin. I particularly like the first 3 press down, even sometimes the first 4, but it makes the effect a little bit more apparent. And yeah, it's just different flavors. And I like that the interface is so simple. It really like forces you to use your ears. There's nothing giving you feedback in the plugin. It's just simple buttons. So,
dude, I learned this one on office hours, and I vividly remember how mind blown I was when I don't remember if it was you or it might have been Tom that I think showed this to us. Like being able to click, have it just opened up. It made it sound so much more obvious and so much cooler. Being able to like combine 1, 2, 3, like don't sleep on this one, guys. That is a killer trick.
Yeah, it turns an already great plugin into even better. So, it's a great one. Another plugin that I really like using, particularly on like samples and loops and that kind of thing, is the SPL Vitalizer. I particularly like the compression circuit here, and particularly this bass knob, and then the stereo expander circuit. Those both sound killer. I particularly find a lot of use for this on like pre-processed samples. If you're pulling samples down from Splice that already have a bunch of effects on them or already EQ'd, sometimes they aren't EQ'd the way that I would want them to. So yeah, particularly if there's a lot going on in the low end. Say it's like a sample that has a lot of bass in it, but you want to like layer your own bass over it instead of just high passing it. I find this compression circuit's another way to deal with that. And you can kind of crank up the compression, crank up the process, and then this knob right here does a lot. Basically, it goes soft to tight, and if you're on the tight side, it's a little bit high pass and much tighter, much more compressed. If you go to the soft side, it's a little looser, a little bigger, and if you're in the middle, it's not doing anything. But yeah, it's just a great way to get different tones out of it than it's doing a little bit more than just cutting out low frequencies. It's compressing and cutting, and sidechaining the compressor a little bit different depending on where you have this knob.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I remember didn't Derek Ali when he broke down his Childish Gambino mix, he spent a good bit of time talking about this plugin. It had a lot to do with the sound of that mix. If I remember a couple NAMM shows ago, Ben, you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah,
well,
totally.
Man, I love that you brought that up for using on samples, right? Because you've also got the stereo expand. Like, there's so many like. It's like a sounds better box. It's like
exactly.
You just pass things through it, and you're like, "Huh, this sounds better. I like it." And then it keeps you in the flow.
Yeah, you can just quickly tighten up the bass, quickly add some stereo expansion if it's kind of flat and mono, and yeah, instantly something that's a lot more usable. So that one's a killer.
Hell yeah!
And I'll do one more plug-in trick here. It's a quick one. So the Oxford limiter, I use this on pretty much every session. Not pretty much. I literally use this on every single session. It's like the last plugin in every single session I do.
Yeah.
By default, it's just in the normal RMS meter. If you put on this recon meter, though, it turns into true peak mode. What it's doing is actually showing you intersample peaks that will occur when the signal gets converted to digital. So when you're not in recon mode, you can basically be well below 0, but there may be parts of the program material that actually will go over 0 when it gets converted to analog. So if you turn this on, it'll show you where those potential intersample peaks are. Basically, these 24s will light up red for any overages.
Oh, cool.
And there's 2 different ways you can deal with it. If you turn on auto comp, it'll basically only correct the overages, only for the time that they're over. So it's really unobtrusive. It only affects the very, very short periods of time where things might go over. It does it all automatically and doesn't touch the rest of your program. Or if you want to do it more manually, you can just, it'll basically show you the amount of overage in this text field right here, and then you can trim by the same amount. So 2 different ways to deal with it. But yeah, it's super useful for making sure that once it leaves the DAW, it's still going to play back good on everything else. So.
And then, of course, you get the enhance slider, which is audio crack.
Yeah. It's a killer.
Hell yeah.
That's a secret for sure.
Oh, I love it, man.
Yeah.
That's Oxford limiter,
That's
man.
basically the inflator. That's the inflator algorithm brought into the limiter plugin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Hell yeah. Awesome. Nice ones, Matt. Monty, back over to you.
Yeah. My next one is going to probably be Moog.
Yes.
I've played several Moogs in my life. This is just probably the best creation I've ever heard of it. It has some real rawness in it. Has lots of tweakability, some extra cutoff frequency filter controls down here that you can get into. But I've had people ask me, hey, what Moog did you use? I'm like, yeah, it's a UA Moog. It's a VST. So it's like nobody believes me. So it's like it's really a great plugin. I've stacked them in this project. I've stacked them several times with some of my other synthesizers, and it's killer. And so the other one is obviously the next instrument UA made, which was Reverb. And Reverb has some really cool features in it. Specifically, you can tone craft it. I like to use a lot of dark tones.
Yeah,
I have a preset. I have a preset called Polyverse. I created a specific sound, which I really wanted, like a lot of dark tones. I add some reverse into it to get some more sound designy type stuff. And then I like messing around with this room effect, which is really cool. And I really just do this to see the lights move. I think that's really awesome.
That's how you get a light show inside of your DAW.
Right. And then one of the cool things is that they fixed some of the pedal sounds and some of the other noises that you can get, bothered by when you use this piano. And you can minimize, some of those sounds. And you can also, set continuous pedal and change the polyphony and also change the velocity. And I play pretty strongly, so changing this for very dynamic pieces is really good in general.
Yeah.
So that's my next one. I'm gonna just mention a couple of other things, like 1073 is kind of a mainstay. Love the Neve stuff. Just being able to run any kind of pianos through that, and I'll scoop out a lot of the highs on purpose just to get a darker piano on purpose. And I do the same thing with basses and things like that. The TubeTech CL1B is like the go-to compressor. I don't have it in this project, so can't pull that up. But it's probably the best tubed compressor that gives me that vibe that I like as far as compression.
Well, it's great too because it's fully variable, right? Like if for all of us, if you're used to using the LA2A, you're used to peak reduction. Cool, that's how you dial it in. But with the CL1B, you get tube compression, you get optical tube compression happening, but you get fully variable attack and release settings for them.
Yeah, and I usually will put those into record mode. I'll record through them from a performance standpoint for the synthesizers and the pianos and things like that as well. Speaking of which, ARM mode. I mean, you can't mention Lunar without ARM mode. Literally, that button right there, that little guy, is a life changer when it comes to performances. It just makes your latency nothing, and you can play, and it feels like a real piano. It feels like real guitar. When you sit down and play guitar through it, it feels really that intangible thing when you record through interfaces that you just don't get through other DAWs. You get that with Luna, and it sounds really, really good. So I didn't want to not mention that as an honorable mention.
Shout out to ARM mode.
Always ARM mode, man. The other thing I do, and I'm running fast because I know we're short on time. The other thing I do is I record a lot of things through virtual channels to other channels. Like I can record, this piano to a virtual channel and take the audio, and I might reverse the piano completely. I might do something like that and get some really cool effects. And do the same thing with synthesizers. I do that with the delays as well. I'll export the delays to a virtual channel, and then I'll reverse the delays to get a different effect as well. So there's some cool soundcrafty things you can do with those little tips.
Love it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I'll keep the train moving here. So I got some more quick little plugin tips. There's a few of these are recent, recency bias, but let me pull up the Avalon 737. We just did a channel strip deep dive on this a couple of weeks ago. In the chat right now, I bet you guys can guess exactly which tip I'm going to show. I'm going to give you all a second to type which tip I'm about to show you. But one of my favorite things about the Avalon, especially if I'm using it at night, like if it's feeling a little bit bright, guess what you can do? Click on the logo and just turn it into dark mode. You get the black faceplate. The sound just takes a 180. Nothing sounds quite like the black panel mode on the Avalon. So make sure you check that one out. And I'm kidding, of course. It sounds exactly the same, but it looks pretty. Easiest tip in the book. But I bet this one. I'm assuming no one knows what I'm about to show with this one. The V76 preamp. Another amazing unison plugin This one, it's one of the simplest. Yeah, everyone called it. I love it. It's a very simple preamp. It doesn't have a ton of features, but it is beautiful sounding. It is. If you're ever just looking to make something sound a little sweet, and it doesn't add a lot of hype to things, but it just makes them sound smooth and beautiful. V76 is the way to go. You do have a couple of filter options. So this one down here, 80 and 300, and 80 plus 300. This is a high pass filter, and you've also got a low pass filter down to 3K. So this can make stuff super, super warm if you want to really just focus on it. But that's not the tip. The tip here is, again, warts and all, you can turn this into German mode. Click on the handles, and all the labels go back to so if you really want to confuse yourself, pull up V76 and put it into German mode just by clicking on the handles here. I don't know why this is not useful at all. It makes it harder.
It's just Will. That's just Will.
It's just
Will having fun.
It's that much more authentic.
Thanks, Will.
So I love doing that one. So that's a couple of quick little Easter egg tips. But back to like the real tips here. I talked about this again when we did our channel strip deep dive. And I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier when I pulled up the Neve 1084 about how you can use the Neve 1084 to go into the mic mode. Well, you can do the same thing on my favorite SSL E-channel strip. When you hit the flip button, when I'm on a mixing session right now, I can take it out of the line preamp and run it back through the mic preamp. So this obviously allows me to pass it through the transformer, adds a lot more gain. So a lot of times I'll just, if someone sends me a vocal or sends me a track that just doesn't quite have a grab to it yet, doesn't quite have like the sonic kind of energy I'm looking for yet, this is one of my first moves I'll do is I'll pull this channel strip up, hit flip, come over here, pull the fader down 10, 20 dB, and just it instantly adds a little extra energy, a little bit of push to the sound that I often find things need. So don't sleep on flipping your SSL into mic mode. And then I think this is one of almost my final plugin tip. Bringing up Ocean Wave Studios. We've talked about this one a lot of times because it is it's a go-to favorite reverb plugin for room sounds. Across the bottom, though, often, usually for me, I pull it up, I find my studio, I go A or B, I find a source that looks cool, turn on some mics till it sounds cool, and then and I don't think about it too hard. But if you want to spend a little more time, you want to get a little more familiar with the Ocean Wave Studios, there's this information tab. This is by default, this is what it shows. It gives you an overview, kind of talks about the workflow and why you would do one thing over another. But what you guys may not have known is that as soon as you start clicking on things, like say, changing my source to the strings, it now gives you a description about the room that we're in, as well as talking about the mics that I have selected. So as I scroll through my different microphones, you're getting a little bit more info about the microphone itself, where it was placed, why it was picked, interesting info like that. And of course, when you switch rooms, same sort of thing. So if you want a little more knowledge, a little more detail about what it is that you're using, so you can affirm your choices in the plugin, this is a great way to do that by going to the information tab, and it's a great way to sit there and kind of learn a little something while you're mixing. And yeah, so I got one more plugin tip. I was going to do it in the next set, but I'll do it in this set now. The Fender Tweed Deluxe guitar. This is, for a lot of us, this is our go-to guitar amp inside of Apollo. One of the things I find with it, and I'm sure you guys have maybe discovered this yourselves, is that when you plug into it, you're like, dude, I thought Fenders were like clean amps. This thing is dirty, right? Like you plug into it, it's default settings. You're getting a little bit of grit. You're getting a little distortion going on. So then, for me, like sometimes what will end up happening is, I'll be trying to like find the setting between 1 and 1.5, like trying to find this like little mode right in between the two here. So that's when it's in normal mode. It can get crunchy really, really fast. There's two ways around this. Two solutions I'm going to offer you guys. Number one is, you see over here, there's actually 4 jacks that you can plug into. Plug into jack number 2. Jack number 2 is 6 dB down. So that it lessens it just enough, and sometimes that's exactly what I need, is just a little bit less input gain. And and I'm usually happy there. But say I'm going for something that's like super, super clean. You can also still, leaving it in the unison slot, flip it from normal into line mode. This takes it down 14 dB. So this gives you a lot of headroom. So all of a sudden it becomes very, very quiet. And then you can start kind of getting up into those like 2 or 3, and you get this really crystal clear, nice clean. It's if you push it, it's going to drive a little bit, but at least gives you a little bit more range to play with on the knobs. So I typically find myself switching this into line mode. Sometimes I'll leave it in the second input. So I've attenuated the signal as much as possible to give myself as much resolution on this volume knob as possible. And if you guys were watching really closely, you notice when I pulled this up, it wasn't a black cable here. If you click on it, you notice when you click on it on the same input twice, it splits into a Y cable. And what this allows you to do is allows you to run into both the instrument channel and the microphone channel at the same time. Zoom in there so you guys can see this. And I had to, once again, I read the manual, guys, so you don't have to. You're wondering, what's the difference between an instrument channel and a mic channel? Well, the mic channel is warmer. The top end is kind of rolled off on the mic channel. So when you do this mode, you're now kind of blending between kind of a warmer channel and a bit of a slightly brighter channel. And you're driving into both of them, so the gain combines. But this allows you to find a really cool, fun blend between the two different channels. And of course, you can do that on the first input or the second input for 6 dB down. So this is one of those plugins that I think all too often I pull it up and like don't instantly love it because it wasn't the clean Fender amp I thought I was going to get. But by kind of doing these attenuation tricks, by turning into line mode, by kind of blending these two channels, by changing the speaker, like this is one of those ones that you can just really quickly dial in a sound, not unlike you would do in real life if you were presented with a guitar amp.
Ben, you're making James Santiago very happy right now. On peeling back all these layers, he's very happy if he's watching.
Hell yeah! So yeah, that's my Fender. I think that's all my plugin tips. I've only got a few more. We're getting really close here. We're crushing through these. So we're closing in on our 100th tip for our 100th episode. Drew, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, I get, we kind of switched the focus over to some plugin stuff, so I figured I'd jump through a couple quick ones. One for me, I'm a big fan of the Galaxy, which Ben, you touched on earlier, and having the ability to pan the reverb and pan the volume. But I'm also a big fan of the EP34, which is, again, warts and all, a mono delay. What I like to do when using either or both of these plugins is I like to slap this guy on it. This is Isotope's free Imager 2 plugin, and it might look extreme, but so the stereo eyes is full blast, and I like mode 1. You definitely want to do mode 1, and then the width all the way out. So that little tip there makes these guys. It just kind of takes our already awesome sounding plugins and kind of just sort of blossoms them into a stereo vibe. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, similar to what you do, Ben, with the presets. The Pultec, I love this thing. I think I've gone over it a few times on the stream before, and I always I have my own preset here called Drew Basic. And I would use default. I always just use Basic is what I've gotten into the habit of. So, nice. And what I do here is kind of it's a seemingly strange thing if you're not familiar with the Pultec, but my default settings for the Pultec are the low end 30 hertz. Attenuation all the way up, and the boost a little bit past 4, which if you scope it out, it actually kind of restores it back to unity gain, but there's just this little dip in the low mids that between the saturation and that little dip in the low mids, it just makes the bottom end and therefore the mids super sweet and tight. And then on the right hand side, I almost always do this a lot on guitars and stuff where I'll just bury the 20K attenuation and then put back either the preset is 8, but I sometimes do 5 or 8. So this seems kind of weird that you would dump out all that top end, but on guitars in particular, everything above 7K is nothing but buzz. There's no tone in electric guitar above 7K basically. So by doing that, you're kind of shaping it and putting it back.
I love that.
Yeah, that's my default. Like I literally just start there, and it will almost make anything you put through it sound better because it just kind of like focuses it and tightens it. Next tip is Transient Designer, another great plugin. You know, I use it a lot on the sustain end of things to either reduce sustain or to extend sustain. This is pretty much foolproof and awesome right out of the gate. However, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes the attack can get a little bit sort of strident. So something that I've been in the habit of doing is, I almost always do this, is anytime I'm using the transient designer, I will always follow it up with the A800. And there's just something about this guy just seems to sort of take that slightly strident attack and that slightly edgy attack that the transient designer makes and just sort of round it out. So those guys are almost always
Nice.
in conjunction with each other for me when I'm doing stuff. So,
Hell yeah.
yeah, and that's it. Those are my three quick plug-in tips.
Amazing. So efficient, Drew. So efficient. On
Yeah,
you,
I'm
Matt.
trying to.
Right on. I got 6 more plug-in tips. I'll try to fly through here. So first one's pretty quick and easy. This HLF 3C, the Pultec. I love this thing. It's a great, just low and high pass combined. The curves sound great, but what I really like it for is doing kind of like a telephone effect. Basically, if you just crank up the low cut, maybe sometimes if you want to make it a little bit warmer, you can crank down the high cut as well. But it just kind of instantly turns something into like a thinner version of itself. Great for like intros and bridges and that kind of thing. And if you want to do like a telephone effect on background vocals or something like that, this is definitely the plugin for it. But yeah, it's super easy. Just to come in here, turn a couple knobs, and instantly got a low and high pass.
I love it. Dude, everyone sleeps on that plugin. We've brought up like maybe once in office hours before, and everyone's just like, "Holy crap! I forgot I have this one." It's such a good one.
Yeah. So quick and easy. It sounds great. Next one is the H910. I love this thing on synths. It works great on a lot of stuff, but for me in particular, I use it on synths pretty much all the time. And what I use it for is kind of the micro shift trick, which if you just load it on with default settings and then turn down the mix knob somewhere around 50%, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what you're doing, it just instantly adds a little bit of stereo imaging. And the harmonizer, it's not perfectly pitch locked. It naturally has kind of a drift that we modeled to it. So it adds just this little bit of movement, a little bit of stereo spread, and a lot more character to things. And if you want to go even crazier with it, using as a direct insert and using the mix knob is one way to go. A way I use it a lot too is set up 2 buses, and I'll pan one hard left, one hard right, and then on one I'll pitch it down just by like 1 cent, so I have it at 0.99, and then on the other one I'll pitch it up 1 cent, so I have it at 1.01, and then it just adds a little bit of spread, so you're it's kind of pretty much doing the same thing as loading it on the direct channel, but with a little bit more depth to it, since you're adding that pitch variation as well. And then these additional delay buttons, in the mode that I'm in right now, if you put it in delay mode, it uses this bottom row of delay values, but just about the default that I'm in right now. These 2 30 buttons will each add 30 milliseconds of delay. So I have it turned on for both of the buses, so it's adding 60 milliseconds delay. It just kind of smears it across the stereo image a little bit more, gives it a little more movement to it, a little more separation to the different pitches. But yeah, it sounds great on synths, samples, a lot of different things.
Hell yeah.
And then another one that some people may have found by poking around in these amp plugins, but any of these Brainworks amp plugins, they have this effects rack button up here. If you click that, it'll flip the amp around, and you get this whole other section of 4 different processes. It's got a noise gate that's on by default, which is awesome for really, really high gain settings. If you want to cut out the buzz when the guitar player is not playing. It's got a built-in delay that you can tap tempo and dial in that way. But what I really like about it is it has all these different amp and cab modeling, cab and mic models. It's got a whole list of them here, and these are all impulse responses. So by default, it's usually like a 212 or a 412 with a 57 on it, but it has a bunch of different variations of that really change the sound of the amp. Then you can kind of combine that with the ability to bypass the preamp or bypass the power amp. So say you were using like your own external guitar amp and sending something inline level, you can actually bypass the preamp, so you're just going through the power amp of the plugin plus the impulse response of the amp and the cab and the mic model. Or you could do the opposite. You could just go through the preamp section and bypass the power section and all this. So yeah, it adds a whole other level of dimension to these plugins and really makes them a little
Yeah,
more,
let's just be clear. Let's just be clear here. That's like you're talking about a DSP based low latency impulse response, engine inside of console, inside of Luna. So that's huge. A lot of people, yeah, you're right, Matt. A lot of people don't know about that. That's a game changer for guitar players.
Yeah, and it's in the Diesel. Any of the Brainworks amps plugins, it has the same list of a bunch of different impulse responses, like 75 of them. And there's even one to disable the cab entirely. So.
I saw someone in the chat earlier requesting a IR loader for console, and this is the trick right here. Yeah. Any of the Brainworks ones, you can use it.
Yep, check this
but you can't, can you add your own impulses to these, or it's only the built-in ones,
you
correct?
Can't. It's just the built-in ones,
fixed list of 75, right?
Yeah, but they're all different. So from one amp to another, there's different sets of IRs in there. So it's not like it's just the same IRs for every Brainworks amp. They're all different for each one.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's hundreds of them, I guess, probably by the time you add them all up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tons of different cabs that are kind of paired with a particular amp, and then a bunch of different mics as well. It's killer.
Love it.
So yeah, another one, speaking of hidden settings, Ben kind of covered this earlier in the 480, but the 224 has a similar open button here. Mm-hmm. If you open that, it'll open this like hidden circuit board settings, which has got the input gains, got output gain, got stereo link. This display hold, like by default, when you move a parameter on here, after 1.5 seconds, it'll reset to show the original parameter. If you turn this on infinity, it'll stay on whatever parameter you touch last, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But what I really like about these heading settings is this pitch shift setting.
Yes.
So it kind of works in conjunction with the mode enhancement. So if you have mode enhancement turn all the way down, you won't hear any difference by changing the pitch shift. But if you have pitch or mode enhancement cranked up and then you combine it with different pitch shift settings, it's not exactly like a pitch shift like you would expect it to be, just pitching up or down, but it does kind of tighten things up or loosen things up in a way that's hard to describe. But yeah, it just adds a whole other level of dimension to this thing.
Nice.
I got a couple more. Something I really like doing for lo-fi tracks is there's a really cool preset in the ATR 102. I think it's by Buddy Miller. It's called Sunbaked Cassette. Yeah, Buddy Miller, Sunbaked Cassette. It's super noisy, so I usually load it up and turn off the noise.
Love that thing.
But it's got a ton of wow and flutter. It's just like moving all over the place. So you can just load this on a bus or on it as an insert just to add some instant kind of like wow and flutter vibe to anything. But what I like doing is sending it into a reverb, particularly I like the EMT 140. It's probably my favorite reverb. But yeah, it just like gives you this very washy bunch of movement to it. Especially if you got like some chords or like Rhodes or that kind of thing. It sounds killer on that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you can send it into different reverbs to kind of get a different flavor. I also like sending it to the BX20 for kind of a little bit more darker flavor. But yeah, it's a killer sound.
So good. That's such a famous preset. Like if I could think of I can't think of a more famous Universal Audio preset than Sunbaked Cassette.
Me neither. Yeah, it's like everybody knows that one. It's great. All right, my last plugin tip. Monty talked about this plugin earlier, but a really cool thing that's not immediately apparent when you pull up the GUI. There's the step sequencer built in, and if you hit the edit button down here, you open up the step sequencer editor, and it has 4 parameters that you can come in here and draw in. It's 16 steps. You can change the step length. You can change the direction that's flowing through the steps. And then if you click on one of these parameters, you can actually select from this whole other matrix of different parameters that you can control. So it just adds a whole other, way to use this plugin. And it's really cool, especially for like kind of syncing with like drum machine type grooves and that kind of thing. It's really, really cool. And you can sync it to the DAW so that basically you can have it free running. If you just turn on this play button, it'll just run through. It's not synced with the DAW playback at all. Or you can turn on sync, and then it's whenever I hit play in my session, it'll start running through the steps. So that's a really cool one.
That's a huge, and then also I love that you can like change the quote unquote glide. That's how much it smooths from step to step. This is you'll lose days of your life just having fun with the step sequencer inside of that.
Yeah. I usually like don't open it with like a particular thing in mind that I want to do. I just kind of like select something, start drawing stuff in, mess with the glide, and usually you found something pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love it, dude. Matt, is that your list?
Sweet.
Is that
That's all my plugins tip. I still got a couple UAD specific ones, but
awesome?
cover
Monty,
that next time around.
are there? I think Monty. I think you blew through your list already, right?
Yeah, I think I only had one more, which was just the 250, the EMT 250. I didn't mention
Yes.
that yet. This thing is sick, man. Like, it's just all around sick. Honestly, you use everything in here: the delay mode, phase, chorus. All this stuff is lots of huge levers to pull here, and it's just fun to play with in general. So I notice every time I'm around the little ones, they always like this screen because it just looks like a video game. But
It does.
it's really really an awesome plugin. It sounds amazing. It's probably my favorite reverb and overall vibe setting. So just being able to swap stages or modes in this plugin is clutch.
You have no idea how many years I used that and did not know there were those other modes to it.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was only a reverb plugin. I was like, it's similar to like the 480, right? Where you're just like, you think of it instantly, oh, that's a reverb plugin, but no, there's other effects in here that are insanely cool sounding, that are just very unique. And if you guys have not played with the phaser or the chorus on the 250, just hit pause right now, go do it, because
it's amazing.
It's so good, dude. Absolutely.
And automating it is crazy too, especially automating the reverb. You can do some really cool like Bowie stuff with that as well. Just really crazy stuff can come out of this thing.
Nice. Awesome. All right, so that's Monty's list down. I got a few more on mine, actually, but I'm going to instead of going back to my screen real quick, I want to show a couple things on an actual Apollo. So I've got a little demonstration solo here for you guys. A couple things that we've talked about. We've shown this a few times when we've talked about plugins, but if you guys don't already know, there's some physical controls that you can do with your Apollos, and this is not just for the solo. It works on the twin, works on the rack mounts. The buttons can be slightly different sometimes, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the preamp mode. So as you can see, you guys can kind of see this. Right now I'm on channel 1. When I hit preamp again, I can select channel 2. But I'm going to keep on channel 1 for right now because I've got a plugin loaded up on my laptop. So, just at a glance, you can see it's allowing me to adjust my gain for my preamp using the knob. But if I press and hold the button, it goes into gain stage mode. You can now see that my channel thing is blinking. And now each time I press this is now, I've got a Neve plugin pulled up for everyone that's following along. That's why I'm stepping through the different gains because it's a step knob. But now when I press this, now I've gone to the yellow, which is my output fader. So now I'm turning that fader up and down. And I press it again, I'm on the green one, which is the digital trim fader. Being able to get in here and like change those different gain stages on my physical device, game change. It is so cool. And like, I can turn my high pass filter on. I can link together multiple channels. I can control phantom power, my polarity reverse, like physical controls of your plugins with your Apollo. If you guys haven't already done this, highly recommend it. And the other thing, while I've got the device here, is for any of you guys, if you're tracking, whether you're tracking yourself or tracking other people, you probably are constantly switching between headphones and speakers, right? Well, the cool thing on here is, when I hit my monitor mode, I'm selecting between monitor or headphones. When I'm on my monitor, I can just quickly press the button and mute my monitors. Goes red, boom, unmute my monitors, come back, change my headphone volume. Quick, easy, simple controls, and I don't think that gets talked about enough, just how intuitive the controls are on your Apollos for headphones, monitors, preamps, that sort of stuff, that you don't always have to do this stuff on the screen. And so now back into the screen, though. You guys you maybe saw this a little bit earlier when Drew was showing, but let's see. Let me bring my window over a little bit so you can see my channel. When you hit the control room button, you get this talkback channel. You'll notice at the top of the talkback channel, you've got inserts. You guys, you can put UAD plugins in real time on your talkback channel. So what comes from your control room out to your musicians. I remember when I was working at studios where I needed a talkback, we'd always use like a 57 or some sort of dynamic mic just kind of placed somewhere. It can be hard to hear the people in the back of the room. So for something like this, guys, I would highly recommend throwing, kind of a low DSP, maybe something like, Century Tube channel strip. Something like this, it's a very efficient plugin. Just turn on the compressor, crank it, give it a lot of gain, pull out the lows, turn on the low pass, maybe use the filter to make it really easy to hear what people are saying. This is a great way to take your talkback mic and make it incredibly clear and easy to hear everybody in the control room. And again, this keeps it all in real time, which I love. So if you're not doing that already, make sure you do. And I got two more, one of which some of you may already know about this, but I find a lot of people aren't aware that on line inputs. So right now I've got a line input here into I believe this is in my X16. You'll notice there's this ref level switch. So you can go between +4 or -10. And +4 is calibrated for normal pro audio circuits, +4 dBu. But, say you've got a keyboard and the gain is kind of on the low side. Let's see. All my gains are just there. It's kind of low. So I could come in, I could use a compressor to bump those up. But the other thing I could do is I could switch this to +10. You hear your Apollo do a little clicky click, and now I've got, I think, like 14 or more dB of gain. And now I can hear my keyboard more clearly. So this is a quick, easy way, if you're using line inputs on your Apollo, to get extra gain out of it. And last but not least, for setting up your Apollos, hit the diamond logo, come to your settings. We talked about this a few weeks ago on office hours, but if you guys haven't already done this, in your IO matrix, you can make presets for yourself. So you can lay out your inputs, your outputs, you can mix and match devices, but more importantly, you can name your inputs. So these don't have to just always be the default names. You can come in here, and in my setup here, everything is kind of normaled in my studio. All my devices are constantly connected. They're always coming in the same channels. So I've labeled them as such. And when you do, a little trick here is you'll notice a lot of my stereo drum machines and synths, if you label them with an L and an R on subsequent channels, when I go back to my session, you'll notice the Juno 106, it automatically labels it Juno 106 L/R. It picks up, this is the same thing, just the left/right, and presents that as my input name, which I really, really, really like, having that stuff organized for me.
Great for sense.
Great for sense, exactly.
Yep.
All right, that's all my tips. Matt, Matt, Drew, you guys got a couple left on your list?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these will be quick. Mine are a couple more utility kind of workflow type stuff. And also a little bit of a preview now that Monty spilled the beans a little bit to us earlier. But one thing I can, a couple of Q related things. Some people I've seen people asking or wondering about, well, how come the Qs don't have master outputs? And this is a little workaround for that. And the idea is that if you command click on a Q on a giving, and I'll do this with the fader so you can see it better. But if you command click on the Qs, you can adjust all of them at once. So this is, this is sort of a way of being able to, if in the heat of a session, if the artist says, hey, can you just turn my headphones down a little bit? I just come up here and I just pull that down a little bit, and everything's good to go. On a related note, option clicking will mute them all, right? So for me, this is big for me, because when I'm doing tracking sessions and I have a studio full of headphones during playbacks, it feels like the right thing to do to go ahead and mute those headphones and give them a little bit of a breather, so that they're not blasting when they're not needed. So yeah, those are a couple of global adjustments of the volume of the levels with command, and then option clicking to do to turn them on and off or mute them all at the same time. The other little tidbit that people might not be used to is there is right click master menus here in if you right click on the header for each cue, and what you have here is you have the ability to make the large icon for each cue separately, or to be able to disable or mute all or copy all, and the same holds true here in the settings menu, where you have the ability to the sends menu, you have the ability to see those. You might notice that those options aren't quite available yet here in the inserts menu, but that's something that maybe it's coming down the road. So anyway, those are A couple quick tips, and I think I think that's good. That's good. I think I don't need to get it. My last one would be a little bit more involved, and I think we're good on time. So
All right, Matt.
Sweet.
Let's polish off your list.
All right, got 5 more. So yeah, first one is the controls mode for UAD plugin. So I'm also doing it in Luna, but this actually applies to any DAW. You can find these settings in the Luna options pane, or you can find it in the UAD control panel as well on the configuration tab. So by default, it's set to linear, which means that any plugins, if you want to turn a knob, you basically drag up or down in a straight line. That's the way I usually like to work. But there's also a couple other modes that you might like. Circular, just like it sounds. It makes it so you can actually turn the knob, so you have to actually drag your mouse in a circular pattern to turn the knob. Just cool, kind of makes it feel like you're actually grabbing a knob and turning it. Mm-hmm. And in this circular mode, you can actually click at the edge of the knob in any place, and it'll actually snap the knob there.
That's cool.
So some of these plugins have it where you click on the text label and it'll snap it, but if that particular plugin doesn't support that, then circular mode will kind of add that functionality.
Nice.
And then relative circular is just like circular, except for it doesn't have that ability to click and point the knob to where you click. So.
Hell yeah. I'd love to see a vote in the chat. Anyone, linear versus circular users. It's kind of like a pre-fader, post-fader thing, I think, where some people have strong preferences for one or the other. I'm definitely camp linear.
yeah, me too.
Linear. Yep.
Right on. Let me move on to my next one here. So on the latest gen of rack mount Apollos, the Apollo X series, there's a function button on the right side next to the monitor knob. Mm-hmm. And I believe you can do it from here. Yeah, so on the hardware tab, either in Luna settings or in console settings, there's this function switch assign. And you have a bunch of different options that you can assign to that function button. Personally, I like leaving it on mono, so I can quickly press that, check my mixes on mono. But you can also set it to Alt-2, so you can be able to switch to your Alt-1 monitoring path and Alt-2 monitoring path right from your hardware. You can use it to turn the talkback mic on and off. It's super useful for a bunch of different things, depending on how you're using your Apollo.
Nice. Obviously, the chat's lighting up with opinions on linear and circular. Linear is certainly winning, but there's some diehard circular users too.
Surprising. Right on. So yeah, last couple ones here. Also on the hardware tab in either console settings or Luna settings. This is specifically for Apollo X interfaces. There's this little button next to the monitor mode, and it'll open the monitor calibration window. What's really cool about this is you can switch the values that the monitor knob shows you between SPL and dB. It's on
That's
dB
so
by
cool.
default, of course. But yeah, so if you really wanted to be super accurate about your monitoring levels, which is smart, save your ears, you can get yourself an SPL meter and kind of play with the monitor knob, figure out where is the sweet spot for you, usually between, I don't know, like 75 and 85 SPL would probably be good. And then you can actually set what that point at the monitor knob is. So say that, right here is 75, and I like that. I can hit set, type in 75, then whenever I move the knob to there, it'll be right at 75. It can always be exactly sure of what monitor or what level I'm monitoring at. So
Dude,
that's a cool
that
feature
one,
tucked in there.
it's a little known feature about Apollo X's, but this monitor calibration thing is so slick. And yeah, for calibrating a perfect 85 dB listening environment, yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and you can also trim. It's maybe not as useful for just a stereo monitoring path, but you can actually trim the left and right sides independently, which is kind of cool. And of course, if you're in one of the surround modes, you can trim each output individually, which is awesome.
Hell yeah! All
Cool,
right.
so now I got one that is a console. Let me pull up my console window here. So yeah, when in console, there's this tap tempo button down at the bottom, which is exactly like you expect. Tap it 4 times and you can set the tempo. But you can actually set that to be triggered via a MIDI controller, which is really cool if you're like using console for like live performance and you want to switch the BPM between songs. You could set it to like a button on your keyboard or something like that. So the way you do that is in the console settings over on the MIDI tab here. You'd select your MIDI controller. So I'm just going to select my keyboard here. And then you can auto-assign the channel and the event. So just click on the channel field, hit your keyboard. It's 1, so it didn't change. again, click on the note value, hit it again, it'll automatically assign it. If you're just pressing like a key or a pad on a controller, it would be note. If you have like something that's not sending, an actual musical note to the computer, then you can do controller. That'd be like a program change switch, or like a bank switch or something like that. But I'm gonna leave it on note here. So yeah, once you set it, let me hit the wrong one here. Yeah, once you set it and you close the panel, should do it here, maybe not. Yeah, so see how the tempo will turn red while I'm tapping, and then as soon as I stop tapping, it'll go back to black, and that's the fixed tempo. So yeah, really cool for using, like I said, console is kind of like a performance effects box, and being able to change your tempo for your delays or whatever you have going on in real time while you're performing.
Hell yeah.
Great.
And the last one, it's kind of could be console, could be Luna, but there's a way to configure your settings to kind of squeeze the most out of your DSP. So say you have a particular session that's like at 99% DSP and you need to fit like one more plugin and you just can't do it. There's a few things you can do to clean that up. So I'll just show you in Luna here. The first one is input delay compensation. So it's set to, probably shouldn't change it well in real time, but it's set to medium by default. And basically this is used for keeping multiple inputs phase aligned if you have internally upsampled UAD plugins loaded across the tracks. So the rule of thumb is like if you're recording just a single track, whether you have plugins on it or not, you don't need input delay compensation. If you're recording like a drum kit and you have plugins spread across the channels in different ways, you're definitely going to want input delay compensation because you want everything to remain phase aligned. So if you're just recording a single track, or if you're not recording at all and you just want to squeeze a couple more DSP points for mixing, set that to off. That'll free up a few more DSP points. Nice. And then similarly, the Q bus count. Reducing this will actually free up a few DSP points as well. Like on my system, it's like 12 cores, and if I set it to 2, it's actually like 2% less than if I set it to 4. So it can definitely make an impact, especially if you're just trying to load like one more LA2A or one more 1176 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then DSP load lock is the other one that I think Ben talked about earlier, but in the UAD control panel, on the configuration tab, there's this DSP load lock button. If it's enabled, whenever you load like a channel strip plugin, like SSLE, for example, it'll load with every single module on the channel strip plugin enabled using the full amount of DSP. And the reason for that is so that if you're in a full session where you use up all your DSP, if you go to enable like the EQ, you won't get an out of DSP message. It's always reserving that full amount of DSP, so you can enable any part of the plugin at any time and it'll work. So that's why it's on by default. But if you want to squeeze a little bit extra DSP, you can turn it off, and then basically any channel strip plugins that you load, it'll only load with the bare minimum active, so it'll load with like the EQ disabled, which saves a few DSP points. So yeah, it'll basically just if you're not using the full scope of all your channel strip plugins or all your modular plugins, it'll reduce your DSP load just by a little bit. Yeah, all those tricks combined can definitely help you squeeze a couple more instances in.
Nice.
And one little word of caution on the delay compensation thing. If you turn it off and then go to do a multi-miking workflow and forget to turn it back on, console won't let you know. So definitely be mindful that if you turn it off and then you go to do a multi-miking scenario, it won't be phase aligned. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. It only warns you if you need more IDC if it's on one of the settings that's not off. So yeah,
exactly.
You can also set it to short, if you don't want to have to remember later.
Yeah.
Short will still save you some DSP, but then if you go to load like a intensive plugin, it'll still warn you that you need to bump it up. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Guys,
that's it.
Let's get a round of applause going because we just railroaded through over 100 tips. We wanted to do it in 100 minutes. We did it in 150 minutes. That's commendable. Like it's one of our the show's gone nice and long, but man, it has been packed full of tips. Holy crap, guys! I know I've seen lots of people in the chat. Lots of love for all the tips and the knowledge. Some familiar tips from some brand new ones, some mind blowers, some just ahas. I've seen a lot of requests. People are asking for can we do like a follow-up PDF or like timestamps? Let's see. I think there's a few people in the community that help us kind of timestamp these ones, so it should be a helpful reference to be able to come back to this video and find these tips again. and then keep an eye peeled to social media over the next couple of weeks, because we'll do the same sort of thing. We'll kind of pull out some of the good bits and pieces and repost those across the socials. But I know a lot of you guys have been sitting here wondering, like, what about? Did someone say something about an update to Luna this week? And yes, we did. We said it at the very beginning of the show, and we
150 minutes ago.
we teased that we were going to talk a little bit about this week's update. So Monty, man, what do you got for us?
Yeah, well, a little while ago we updated the delay feature, and I went over that earlier. We went over the track delay, but we added something a little different for those of us who work in the nudge workflow, and so we have now nudge in Luna.
Yes.
So this is really clutch for people who want to go both forward and backward in their nudging. So, like, if you want to just move some things around in the audio. And so this nudge feature is it's a new panel. You can go into your edit toolbar here, and you'll see nudge now in this toolbar at the top. And once you click on this little drop down here, you can actually see that we have grid, beats, time, samples, and ticks. And grid it locks it to your session grid, so you don't have to worry about what it's set to. You can just use your grid setting. And when you get into beats, you can nudge by beats, time by time, milliseconds specifically. Samples, for those of you who are samples fans who want to nudge by samples, we have that now. And then we have ticks as well. And so with the time, which is my go-to, if you set any kind of parameter in any of these settings, it'll remember if you jump back into them. So you don't lose what your setting was. So if you want to nudge by time and then by beats later, you can do that. And for our shortcut ninjas out there, we do have nudge shortcuts. So clicking on a timeline using the period button, a period key is going to nudge you to the right. Using the comma, nudge you to the left. If you want to go to the next setting up, you just use the / and it'll nudge you to the next nudge setting up, and the M key to nudge back.
I love the fact that you can get the setting that you typically have, but you also can go, hey, I just need to move this a little bit faster. Being able to
That's right.
The shortcuts just all make perfect sense.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10, this is going to be the main thing you do. Once you learn the shortcuts, you kind of don't need to look here anymore, but it does retain this setting for you in the session. And then the other thing that you can do is if you hold down Control, you can actually nudge within the clip itself, within the actual clip. And the outside of the clip stays where it is, but the content inside is nudged. Same shortcut keys, but you're holding down the Control key.
Nice.
Same thing also applies for Shift workflows. You can hold down Shift and use those shortcut keys as well.
So Monty, just to be clear here, Luna has had nudge for MIDI, and it was but this is now we're adding it for audio as well as creating this sort of unified nudge popover, right? Is that the idea?
Yes. The idea was to make it so that every clip in your session can be nudged, and we have one place to do this. And different DAWs have there's a lot of folder diving to get to it, and you can nudge, but you can also even use these arrows. If you don't want to use shortcut keys, you can just use arrows here. We wanted to just make it super simple on the UI to nudge any kind of clip on the timeline. So that's what that's for.
Nice.
And we also have the ability to, if you wanted to just quickly punch in something, you can double click here, and you can say I want to nudge by 25 milliseconds instead, and you can automatically set it to a certain setting, whatever your setting is.
Awesome. Nice, man. So that's 1.1.9 that is dropping sometime this week, correct?
Yes, sometime this week it'll come out. We're wrapping up the last little bit of it, and we'll get it out to you guys soon.
Nice. Any other features or fixes that we should let people know about?
There are lots of basic upgrades to in 1.1.9. There's a list that I need to look at, but I don't want to show my screen.
We're gonna have one of the things.
So
one of the things is the ability to import FLAC or an A FLAC, Apple's lossless. Yeah, those two things. That's going to be a cool. I don't know about you guys, but it's cool to be able to just bring those FLAC files in.
Yep.
And then some other select all and delete selected track shortcuts that are coming along as well.
Yeah.
Nice. Guys, man, we made an epic 100th episode. We packed so much information into the show. I can't thank you guys enough for helping me do this every week. Especially Matt and Drew. You guys have been here from the get go, and I mean that's what it's all about. This is all about sharing knowledge, sharing our passion for not just Luna, but for UA, for music, for audio.
Yeah.
Like this is, guys, we'd be doing this even if this wasn't our jobs. Like we would be doing this sort of stuff every day because we really, really love getting in here and just the creativity that you can have with these tools and how they allow us to make music and make things sound better and chase that dream, like chase those sounds in our heads and like create it. That's what this is all about. So if nothing else, guys, I hope you all are walking away today inspired. You got some new things to go try out, some plugins to peep, some gain staging to explore, and man, we're gonna keep on doing these. If you guys keep on showing up like this, we'll keep on doing shows.
That's awesome.
It's all because
blast,
you guys
man.
all of you guys at home, man. It's so cool seeing everybody in the chat. You guys are such a great, positive community. We've got next week. We'll be on episode 101, and we'll find something fun to do. It won't be as epic as this one. Can't do 100 tips every single episode, but we'll definitely find something fun. And then we've also got a big show that we'll be announcing mid this week. That's going to be next week as well. That I'm really, really looking forward to sharing with you guys. We got a huge artist on the line to come perform with us next week. So stay tuned. Make sure you sign up to the UA newsletter to get the info about that one. And I think that's it. Guys, everybody, thank you so much for hanging in with us. Monty, Matt, Drew, thank you guys for the tips. Yep. Everybody home, thank you guys for watching. We'll be back here again next week. Have a great week, everybody. Go out, make some music, have some fun. Stay safe. See you soon.
See you next week.
See ya.